Hello, everyone, and welcome to Weekly Manga Recap here on March the 25th of 2020. It is nice that you were all able to join us from your bunkers today.
I don't know. Did people have time?
Time to join us?
Yeah. Do you think they might be busy?
I don't know. Maybe we're just speaking into a void, Chris. Maybe no one out there can hear us. Maybe we're the last 2 men on Earth.
We're gonna have to repopulate, Nick.
It's going to be very difficult. But we'll give it a go.
we're gonna give it an old college try, though.
Everything's depending on us.
Yeah, we don't want to let everybody down.
We're just like just opens the door. Everyone's fine. What are you guys doing? Shut up! This is important.
We're saving the world.
All right. You get okay.
You know what? Just let them have this. Just let them. Nick, what a world we're in.
Yes. Things are very strange right now.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that they've even changed the world around us, Chris. There are different faces around us right now than there are normally.
I know. So. Look at all those weird series over there. I miss Raku from Nisekoi 3 years after it ended. He was like a constant in my life.
So current.
Mm-hmm. Now people could come in. They could be like, "Oh, hey, most of these series you talk about." I also like that Jotaro snuck in there. Despite this never recapping JoJo, except for like JoJo Part 8 very early on in the series. But hey, you know what?
Well, he's a recurring segment, I guess. You know,
I guess there's no Pokemon in there.
Bias, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna have to have an issue with the creator.
I don't really. I mean, other than, just the pre-existing issues that I've got with Infamous,
Yeah. Well, people are saying there's no Eden Zero characters. There absolutely is. Right between Soma and Kay from Act Age, you can see there's a Eden Zero character.
Just, dyed his hair a little different.
Yeah, the hair's a little different color, but otherwise, same character as far as I can tell.
Is that Denji right next to Yuma?
Yeah, it's Chainsaw. So I just sent Infamous a bunch of different shots of color pages essentially, and Chainsaw Man has a bunch of really dope ones where he's in his chainsaw form. So
yeah. Well, you didn't send him the lesbian orgy one? Come on.
Honestly, I don't know how that would have gone over. I don't know if he'd have just been like, "Is this what jumps become?" I remember when it used to be about integrity. It was it. Beep, beep.
It's been a while since we pulled out that one.
Yep. It's always there in the back pocket if you need it.
Yeah, good to know.
Yep.
All right. So we have a lot of manga to talk about today.
Which is unfortunate. I've read none of it. This entire week has just been spent watching eBay miniature rescue videos on YouTube where people buy bad miniatures on eBay that people are like, I don't want these anymore. And then they're like, we're going to paint this like a master would. And I'm just like, it's like, my soul, what it needs right now. It's chicken soup, but in a video form.
I see those oftentimes whenever we're watching something on Nicole's computer because she's very much into the make this miniature look way better thing. So, but we don't have a lot of time, Chris. We've got to talk about, not in that sense.
Oh, phew. Okay. I was like, is the grim specter of death behind me once more?
I don't know. If ever either of us were going to bring that up, it would probably be me. I am the one who wears skulls on all of his shirts, so.
I mean, I'm wearing an Iron Maiden t-shirt right now. So.
Okay. I've got Cody's Nightmare King thing.
You know what? How that would look nicer? I think if you tattooed it onto your neck.
No. Look, I know that Cody Rhodes listens to our podcast all the time. So if he's listening right now, despite the fact that he's due to go live on Dynamite in 10 minutes, listen, man, I love you. You're my favorite wrestler. It's a bad idea for you to do that. It's
You know, I get all the logic behind it. I absolutely do. There's a level of it I respect. Man, I feel like there was still a better way to go than that particular one, that particular angle on that particular part of the body.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
hey, you know what? You figured out the hard camera and empty arenas first, so I guess
good point.
not everything's off.
Who are we to argue with that?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, every artistic decision you make is correct. Good job.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, Chris.
Dark Order sucks.
Ooh. My Hero Academia, chapter number 265, Villains and Heroes. So last time we saw a bit of the battlefield, we saw a bit of what's going on with Hawks and Twice, and we see basically the same thing this time, only a slightly different balance between the two. There's a little bit more of the former and a little bit less of the latter, just a little. So this one features Sun Eater and Tokoyami getting to shine. So Sun Eater does something that I think is incredibly badass, which is uses his animal transformation ability to turn into a fucking centaur with tentacles. And
that
there's a
implies
there.
he's been eating horse at some point recently, though, doesn't he?
He can eat horse meat.
Yeah, it feels kind of sad. You know.
Maybe he ate a deer. He ate some venison.
All right, maybe.
It was a horse. It was Chris's favorite. That's what it was.
No, my favorite horse, Horso.
Of course, it would be named Horso. And after that, Tokoyami heads down this corridor, which he has headed with Fat Gum and Sun Eater to block because it's one of the few parts leading out of the facility that hasn't been collapsed by Cementos' ability. And he sends Dark Shadow down the tunnel to attack anyone who's planning to come down it with his new technique, Ragnarok. It's not Ragnarok. There's an umlaut in there, so you have to use the proper pronunciation.
Yeah,
so there.
Nerds.
Why is everyone else the nerd after I made that distinction? Redestro, of course, who last time had been feeling a lot of stress, ends up intercepting the Dark Shadow and just kind of has a tussle with it. But after a short kind of wrestling match with it, his artificial legs give out and just break apart at the ankles, and he ends up getting flung backwards. So, yeah, Tokoyami, quite badass when he's sending his Dark Shadow underground. But Redestro is sent flying through a wall around a crowd of people. Dark Shadow is retrieved by Tokoyami, and Dark Shadow warns him that there's a real nasty one down there. And Tokoyami's like, yeah, I felt him, nearly stand up to our Ragnarok ability. And the Dark Shadow says, no, not that one, a real monster. And we see a little shot that it seems the Dark Shadow got a glance of Gigantomachia, who is still just kind of sitting in the corner somewhere.
He's hanging out,
Which
he's social isolating, as the kids
yeah,
say.
he's like, please keep 6 feet away from me. Actually, I'm really, really big, so if you could keep 30 feet away from me, I don't want any germs. Please. Thank you. Can I have 10 gallons of hand sanitizer, please? Thank you. Okay, we're done. All right. Beckham says to Tokoyami that they had already heard about Gigantomachia and they don't have to worry about him unless an order from the boss comes. So they don't have to worry about him for now because they don't think that there's going to be such a message reaching him. I'm sure that that's the way things are going to be for the rest of this battle. We won't see Gigantomachia do anything.
Nope. It's called Chekhov's Machina.
Yep.
Where you introduce somebody really big who'd beat everybody up, and then the battle ends, and no one addresses that fight ever happened. Some people call it the Yami effect, but people don't realize Yami actually did fight people, it just wasn't relevant. So that's sort of the defining difference between the two.
There are a lot of examples of it through shonen manga, to be fair to Bleach, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
are you trying to preemptively...
Yami beat some people in his introduction, Chris. Come on.
Yeah, I'm referring to that was 10th Espada Yami, not 0 Espada.
You're completely correct. Yes. Yeah. They're two different characters, obviously. His number Who said that the Espada would be ranked from 1 to 10? Well, that guy. But anyway, aside from him.
Everyone seemed to kind of work under that assumption because nobody treated you with respect as apparently the strongest.
What if it were just like, there are 10 Espada ranked Pi, E, 65, Blurdy Schmidt.
There are 10 Espada ranked on a base 3 system. Like, what the fuck is that? God damn it.
Everyone like, gets out on their fingers.
All right, so like 9 is the strongest? I don't understand what this means.
That would be 30 because it's 3 threes. So
Jesus.
Everyone just gets annoyed by this. That's actually one of the Espada's powers, is just annoying someone with complicated math that they never use in the real world.
That's how
they use this. Never. But
that's how they should have beaten the human characters, because like that actually, like, most of them were stupidly smart, weren't they? Like, there was no real dumb character in the group.
Ichigo and Shad were very studious. Ishida was ranked number 1 in the class, and Orihime was like number 3 in the class somehow.
So like, I was really hoping. I was like, well, one of them, that's how they trick him. I was like, no, never mind. They were all super intelligent.
Ichigo was the least smart of the human characters, and he was still ranked like 27th or something like that in his entire year. So he was not dumb. So anyway, that aside, Tokoyami gets in Fat Gum's belly, rather literally. You see his head poking out. It's very silly. And Fat Gum has a little joke about this, because he's like, "What am I, a taxi?" I mean, I assume you took him into you in order to do this, so yes.
And that is also partially what your power is kind of about, if I recall. I don't think it's the first time we've seen him transport somebody like this.
Right. So he's running with Tokoyami inside of his stomach, and Fat Gum says that they learned of this due to Hawks in his investigation. Tokoyami asks for clarification because of his connection to Hawks. Fat Gum says, well, I don't know really a whole lot about it, but he's probably somewhere around here. Tokoyami thinks about his time training with Hawks and the advice he had passed on to him and stuff like that, the stuff that was covered in the Versus Class 1B stuff. And Tokoyami, kind of has the same thing that Bakugo had with Best Jeans, where he's like, I want you to see, the kind of hero that I've become. And then we cut over to Twice and Hawks. Twice had released his Sad Man's Parade at the end of the last chapter. That apparently did not go very well for him, because Hawks just used a bunch of his feathers to defeat them immediately as they come out. And Hawks explains that, you're making these really quickly, but each double you make is less durable than the last. And so, some of them are dissolving, some don't as I pierce them. So, sure, you can replicate, but you can't keep up with me. And Twice realizes this, and Hawks just says, after coming this far, I can't allow sentiment to trip me up. There's still a way forward if you come quietly now, because I like you. But Twice summons doubles of everyone in the League of Villains, and he says, these are my only friends in the world, and you ain't welcome to join the club. And they're all immediately disintegrated by more of Hawks' feathers. So Hawks says, why do you think I prioritize speed when I take down villains? Because it's the ones who don't give up who heroes need to fear the most. Experienced villains with wills of steel refuse to get knocked out. And he slashes Twice across the chest with one of his larger feathers, and then pins him to the ground with it held at his head. And he says, when either side gives up, somebody has to die. So this is a bit of a follow-up on that speech that Fat Gun gave to Kirishima all the way back in the Overhaul arc, where, he said, your job as a hero is to make the villains give up quickly. So this is Hawk saying, yeah, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you gotta fucking kill someone. You think that Hawks has actually killed someone before?
Oh, I'm sure Hawks has killed someone before. It feels like that's why he was the one kind of chose to do this mission, is because he's the one who probably has gone there.
Yeah. So Twice says, you guys ain't heroes. None of you were. You threw us to the wolves, all of us downtrodden folks. You don't know or care, but little Togo wrapped me up in her hanky, all gentle like. But I bet you didn't know this either, but this is the second time I managed to screw everyone over. Toga probably won't do me that kindness again, but that's okay. I still got to protect their happiness. And he starts to summon a double even as he's being pinned down. And Hawk says, well, I'll be sure to tell the League that. And then a huge wave of blue fire washes through the room, blows Hawks away, and Dobby appears and says, there's no need. I heard him loud and clear. Didn't notice me there, did ya? Looks like sentiment tripped you up after all. And he smashes Hawk's visor as he pins him to the floor with his foot. And it seems like he blasts him with a wave of fire at point-blank range. So we saw Dobby on his way towards Hawkson twice at the end of the last chapter. He showed up to save twice. And I guess that we're going to probably get a little bit of an explanation. I'm imagining right now that probably what happened was that Dobby had always suspected Hawks. And so he went to go and check up on...
I think it was... They mentioned that most of the League of Villains didn't fully trust him.
Well, and Dobby in particular was the one who was trying to test Hawks before letting him in, too. So, maybe turning point. So,
yeah, I mean, it's a super satisfying little exchange that happens, and it's sad because you keep seeing the way this conversation goes. Is the only thing that really matters to Twice are these friends that he's sort of found, and Hawks is just kind of ruthlessly saying it doesn't really matter. They're all going to be arrested. I've been giving you opportunities to try to get out of this as in a happy life as you can get, and unfortunately it's come down to this. And I just love that line from Dobby where it's looks like sentiment tripped you up after all because you never realized I was here, and now you've gotten a face full of fire, so it's probably not going to end too well for you, no matter which way this goes.
Dobby 2020. That's the whole quote. You got to say the whole thing.
Oh, man, it's so long. No one's going to remember that.
You can't just say, didn't notice me there, did you? Looks like sentiment tripped you up after all. And now you get a nice wave of fire to your face because you didn't notice me. But I'm here now. And I do like whenever we get these moments between the League of Villains showing, hey, I mean, these guys are all assholes. Many of them are just flat out psychopaths, but they do have this weird sense of camaraderie between each other. And I think that makes them, easier to kind of empathize with for moments like this, but also easier to buy oh, right, these guys are assholes, but they're still making sure to look out for each other. So,
yeah, I mean, this is sort of the best way to write a villain group, because far too often it's when they just eat each other alive. You're I kind of see this all the time. That's generally
we've got that going on in this week's Boruto chapter, for example. So, all right, let's move on to Actage. Scene 106, competition. Hanako is trying to paint by herself, and she can't summon anything to paint. So she thinks about the stuff that Kuriyama told her about. And she starts to leave the room, and I guess she randomly runs into Kay, but I don't know. She must have really not been paying attention, and Kay must not have been either, because they just bonk. Also, Kay does not react to this at all, but Hanako goes, and falls to the ground. So Kay's got the hard head gimmick. She, she could be like a Samoan wrestler. Just bonk.
Yeah. So, she's like Haku.
Or the Usos, or the Head Shrinkers, or it's a large number of quote-unquote savage wrestlers, sadly.
What was Akeem, the African Dream?
Well, he was white.
I know.
Also racist. Anyway. So Kay is there with the rest of the cast from her play group, and Hanaka's like, "Oh, I was gonna, check in with everyone, but what are you guys doing here?" And Kay's like, "Well, we can't rehearse without you. You're our director, and we've got another performance tomorrow." So Kay tells her, direct the real Princess Iron Fan, because everyone's like, we're not giving up now. We're gonna try and beat the other group. And Hanaka thinks to herself that she has lost her art, her fire, everything, and still the feeling of frustration remains. So she agrees. And so they go over basically the stuff that they've learned from Group B's interpretation of the play about how Princess Iron Fan isn't angry. She's unable to forgive herself for loving the Ox King. So they say, like, hey, Kay, have you ever experienced something like that? And she's like, no, so that's the problem. And Ricky says, we should have had a torrid love affair after all. You want to try it for it now? And she says, well, I'd have to experience that and the heartbreak afterwards, so there isn't time. Which is a very weird way of saying, no, you creep, but... So, Kay asks Hanako, like, hey, how did you fall in love with him? Meaning her father. And so she's kind of, embarrassed about it. And she's like, well, all right. If I had, stuck to just, doing all the other art that I've done, I wouldn't have had to go through all this. But instead, I had to choose a freaking form of art that requires interaction. But all right, it's time we go back to square one. And we get a time skip because there are other performances going on than the ones that we're actually focusing on. Team A's second performance is not good. Team B's continues to improve. Go through the third performances, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, there's such a gap in viewership. But now, even so, Yonagi refused to give up. I guess it's just a purely like, you wouldn't have just 4 performances thing. You would have 8, I guess, in this case. But it's odd that we had this whole setup of, okay, each group is going to have a certain number of performances, and we're just not going to bother with some of them. Whatever.
Well, we're just trying to get to the end point. Like, they don't have, like, time to do a time skip, really, like, in the sense of, like, 3 weeks later of practicing. Like, they have to explain all this is going to happen in a week. So to get, like, that final conflict, they had to be like, all right, so we can't just say they immediately got better after the next 3 performances. Like, they have to have still sucked for a bit because they're still trying to get their footing.
Right.
And there's nothing really to say about Group B's performance because it was already great.
It's good.
And it's just going to get better, that sort of thing.
Right. So Hanako and Kei go to meet with Chiyoko and Kuriyama's group, and they say, I want you to tell us how Chiyoko is playing Princess Iron Fan. And Chiyoko's like, why would we do that? And so Hanako says, we'll share our approach to Princess Iron Fan exchange. And Kuriyama is just like, well, what's in it for us? Like, which is a good point of like, yeah, but yours sucks. So, but he observes the look in Hanako's face that she's not, willing to give up just yet. So Chiyoko's like, all right, fine. We're going to use this to our advantage. So they start holding joint rehearsals between both teams, giving each other feedback and working to improve both performances. This results in great improvements on both sides, but Yonagi sees that it doesn't close the gap. It's really weird to have this kind of just like montage. It just bugs me. I don't know. So the producer says to Kuriyama that it is almost time to put the plan into motion, but Kuriyama is focused on actually, still fine-tuning everyone's performances. The producer says, you've already won the contest. And he just says, there's no telling what could happen tomorrow. So he goes on to explain, if we could quantify the quality of a performance, life would be easy, but we can't. So they have to keep transforming. So thanks. I never expected Yamano to drop that bomb, but it's helped to make things really clear. So basically, he's not willing to let everyone rest on their laurels just because they have a seemingly indomitable lead. Because he saw how the Shinryuji Naga lost to the Damon Devil Bats.
They're up by 6 scores. They can't lose.
We will keep on steadily scoring instead. So eventually, we see a little just private meeting between Chiyoko and Kei as they're just sitting quietly together. And Chiyoko's kind of staring at Kei while Kei has her eyes closed. And Chiyoko asks her, what are we doing? It's almost time for the play. What do you want? And Kei's just like, I just wanted you around me. I wanted your presence, which is the same as they did back when they had their little not a date at the mall. They talk a little bit more about their performances. Chiyoko says that if they lose, then she'll lose everything to Kei. But if they win, then she gets to continue acting forever. And Kei's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Chiyoko says, I know it's stupid. Of course, nothing's that simple. I've forgotten that even once this plays over, the competition never ends. We'll still be actors when we're wrinkled old ladies, which is a nice little thing of like, you and me are going to be doing this forever kind of thing.
I have to assume that is directly a reference to the Greta Gerwig, Saoirse Ronan quote back when the Oscars were happening, because it's almost exactly the same thing. Where
how's that go?
Basically, Greta Gerwig and Saoirse Ronan are like, you guys gonna keep doing it? They're like, oh yeah, we're gonna keep making movies together until we're making movies about being old ladies together, essentially. Aww. So like, I assume it's because it's the same sort of idea of like a young female like duo who were like, yeah, we're gonna keep just making movies together until we're old ladies.
That'd be kind of sweet, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. It's time for the performance. Hanako's giving some last-minute directions to a bunch of people. Kei shows up. She's in her Princess Siren fan gear. Ricky asks her about that. Oh, did you get some help from Momoshiro? And she says, yes, I'm burning. Today we're going to win. So it's time for the comeback. It's time for the long past the Yukimitsu, Chris. We'll see how that turns out.
Yeah. Great. I'm going to read that chapter again. You want to read that? He catches that ball so well.
Actage chapter 107. All right, so Hiruma was just thrown to pass, and Yukimitsu is running next to EQ and Aegon, and Aegon and EQ aren't even paying attention to him.
Yeah, they're just competing over who's going to get the interception because it's such a guarantee one of them is going to get it. But they don't realize the thing that Yukimitsu has is the extra effort. It was a ball that was just going to be overthrown, but Yukimitsu pushes himself forward, gets the tip on the ball, and gets the touchdown. Fuck, I'm actually getting a little emotional. What a great goddamn chapter.
You know their defense, Yukimitsu. You know where the gaps in their zone defense are.
Their zone defense, as it's clearly cover 2-man coverage.
Oh man, we should go back through Aisha 21 and just like be like, no, this is wrong. This is not how plays are drawn up.
I remember I was in a relationship with somebody and I was like showing them, I was like, oh, I love this manga, and I showed them the Jumanji One More Touchdown scene, and she's like, isn't his knee down before the goal line? Like his knee's touching the ground. He's down. I was like, no, you can't tell me that. You've ruined this moment for me.
And that was their first and last date.
Yeah, I was like, no! And I deleted the number from my phone, and then I broke it.
Just to make sure you couldn't undelete the number.
I was like, nobody can come. Nobody can talk to me now.
All right. Boruto, number 44, Amado. Naruto wakes up. He's been rescued by the kids. Boruto is there along with Himawari and Hinata. Boruto goes to tell everyone about it. That, hey, Naruto's woken up. We see Kawaki being tended to by, it's been forever since he actually showed up. Science Guy and Science Guy's daughter, who's got a thing for Boruto, I think.
And who wouldn't? He's so cool, Nick. He's so cool.
He's so cool. The way that he breaks those microwaves. So... the doctor says, so we think that you're having an adverse reaction from forcing the continued attachment of a chakra incompatible prosthetic hand. Might be the nanomachines in your blood are trying to reject it, but your body's functions are going to keep declining and your muscle pain is going to probably persist. So, hey, there's going to potentially be a bit of complications from him continuing to use the artificial hand that he's got on loan from Naruto. So, a reason for him to get one made for himself. Good deal. Kawaki refuses getting any painkillers. Boruto shows up to tell him that Naruto's woken up. Shikamaru reports to Naruto about what actually happened when Boruto, Kawaki, Sarada, and Mitsuki went to go save him. And I like how they do kind of bring up, because Shikamaru is like, I mean, it turned out well, but you can't condone them doing that. And Naruto's like, oh, Genin's acting rashly, huh? So I guess things haven't changed at all since we were brats. It's like, yes, you two did go with a couple of your friends in order to go and save Sasuke in a mission that was a complete failure, and all of you nearly died. So, good point.
What are you going to do?
Still the best part of Naruto. Um, he also brings up that Jigen can use the karma to infiltrate Konoha at any time, so they're still under threat. We cut over to Karma's base, where Kashin is meeting with Amato, and they do a weird thing because so so Kashin summons a toad, the same ability that Jiraiya and Naruto would use. Um, then he's like, "All right, Amada, put your fucking cigarette out before we get in the fucking stomach." And Amada's like, "All right, fine." And he starts to get in the frog's stomach. Delta shows up and is like, "Where do you think you're going?" And so Kashin's like, "I'm gonna take her out, Amato." And Amato's like, "No, no, no, don't bother." And he says, "Time to go to sleep, Delta." And Delta just goes and falls to the ground, unconscious with her eyes open. And Kashin looks at her as like, an emergency shutdown code. I've probably been given the same thing. So I guess everyone's just largely robot now, I guess.
Probably. I do like the idea. Like, maybe the idea is it's a secret genjutsu within it, and not that the password to shut off the robot is like, turn off now, please. Like, it'd been much more funny if he had just been like, Abacus applesauce, Delta. She's like, what the fuck?
What is Abacus? So Amato gets in the frog's mouth. Kashin performs a reverse summoning to banish it. It shows up in a forest. And Amato's like, all right, I'm out here now. Damn it, I forgot to bring a light for my cigarettes. How did you light them before then?
Oh, with the ambient fire energy that crackles inside the whatever base, whatever they're Kana? No.
Maybe Amato is just like really weird about using the same lighter twice.
Oh yeah, he throws it away.
So he just and boom, gone. There's just a pile of Bics over in the corner.
Oh, cheap ones too. Come on, man. If you're gonna smoke that much, at least look. I'm not here to advertise smoking, but I think it is a provable fact that all of the paraphernalia for smoking is so cool. Like, it's all just so awesome.
It is definitely designed to make you think it is cool enough that you forget about how horrible it is. So,
like, sometimes I've considered getting like a cigarette case and like you open it up and inside's just Tootsie Rolls, because like that's all I'd be interested in.
They on Community there was a running gag that Troy and Abed had candy cigarettes that Troy would carry in a cigarette holder. So
yeah, like that.
But yeah, so he's just like, yeah, they're like matches, right? You know, only one use. Like, no, there's fluid. No. Listen, I'm a scientist. I'm pretty sure I know what I'm talking about here. Sarada is in the hospital as well, talking with her parents, and Mitsuki's also there too, I guess. And she explains what happened with Boruto with the transformation, and also points out that his right eye was a Byakugan, which is, I think, something we overlooked when we actually talked about this last time. And she talks about how strong he was and how his personality was different. And Sasuke realizes, like, oh, so it's like the Otsutsuki. And so Sarai's worried about her friend. Sakura tells her not to worry about it. And Sasuke just says, hey, just take it easy for now. But Mitsuki pulls Sasuke outside and is like, listen, I have a character. Believe me, I have important contributions to make to this series. Please don't send me to the pit, please. I can be relevant. But then he says, what's happening to Boruto isn't normal. It's clear to everyone, not just those like me who watch him closely all the time. Okay. But he also mentions that Boro had said that Boruto was Momoshiki's vessel. So Sasuke's like, all right, so he's still alive inside the karma trying to take over Boruto's body. And then he's like, and I think that, Jigen is a vessel for another being. And Mitsuki's like, and then very suddenly we cut over to Chocho and Inojin and Shikadai. Yes, that's their names. The new Ina Shikacho. they're training against each other in a little battle royale thing, and there's a little bit of action between them. And then Amado shows up, and he's applauding sarcastically while leaning against a tree. Listen, if you ever like randomly come across someone and you think that they've done a good job, don't do this. Like, just be like, "Hey, good job," or like actually properly applaud at a proper cadence, and don't be leaning against a tree when you're doing it, because everyone's gonna immediately know like this person's a bad guy if you do that. So don't do that. So he approaches them. Shikadai is like, "Hey, you're at the boundary of Konogakure, so state your business and don't come any further." And Amado is like, I have something to discuss with your father." And Shikadai is like, "Well, I'll use my shadow paralysis jutsu thing. Ha!" And Amado lets the tuning fork drop out of his sleeve, and it rings, and everyone clutches their ears, and Shikadai is stuck. And he's like, "He hijacked my shadow paralysis jutsu." Okay. Not sure how a tuning fork does that, but all right.
It's a scientific ninja tool, Nick. It doesn't need to explain itself. It just is.
So then he goes and he snaps out a couple of needles from his glove, pierces Shikadai's neck with them, and he immediately falls unconscious. And then he puts a collar on his neck. And he's like, "That's a benign drug, but whether you survive past the day is up to your father." Inojin gets in contact with Ino using the Yamanaka communication ability thing. And he's like, "We need to talk to Shikamaru right now." And Shikamaru has gone with Naruto to go and visit Kawaki in the hospital. And he thanks him for, going as far as he did to try and save him. Talkie. Well, need to be even more restrictive with your movements, Kawaki, because you broke the rules, blah, blah, blah. "It's an emergency, Shikamaru. Word, listen, come quickly. Shikadai has been captured by a Kara guy, and the bomb's around his neck. Oh, no!" And already Sai and several other ninja, some of which have names, actually. I think Moegi's over there. Anyway, they're like, "All right, but Amado's demanding to speak to you." So they try and fight Amado, but it doesn't matter. He's got, "Look, there's another thing. Look, I put a bomb over there. Kaboom! And that'll blow off Shikadai's head if you don't, do what I say within the next 48 hours. And only I can disarm it, so you can't kill me." So they let him go. And he's like, "Before we get into it, sorry I had to do this, but I'm in a rush. Okay, let me speak to Shikamaru." I'm getting the impression, actually, as I'm getting vaguer and vaguer on the details here, that I didn't actually read these final 5 pages, so
you're like,
kind of winging
stuff
it here.
happens.
Stuff happens.
Dude is there.
Blah, blah, blah. Verbal sparring. They link together Ino, Naruto, the doctor, and Shikamaru while they're talking with Amado. And so he's like, "Hey, our Hokage is actually back. He's standing next to me." And I was like, "What? Someone beat Boro? Who?" And so they're like, "Well, hey, it's me, Uzumaki Naruto. I'm here. What do you want?" "Well, fine. All right, then. I wish to defect to Konoha." And they're like, "What does that mean?" "I will offer intel to you on Kara, Jigen, the Ten Tails, and Otsutsuki. I'll share everything I know." Which is why I put a bomb around this kid's neck.
Yeah, like, I get the idea of, like, he's like, "Hey, I don't really like the way this organization's going. There already looks to be some internal strife going on. I'm going to defect. There has got to be a better way to defect than, like, I'm going to show up and strap a bomb to one of your children's chest, neck, and that'll surely diffuse the situation, right?"
Hey, fuse.
Maybe the impression you're meant to get is he's just that bad of a dude that, like, we really shouldn't like him. But if they try to, I don't know, like, in my mind, I'm like, is this supposed to be kind of like the Kabuto figure of this series, where you're like, he's sort of a bad guy who betrays people, but deep down there's maybe like reasons for it. And I feel like if you dive into the reasons and you can't have him show up and strap bombs to children's necks, maybe it was something where they're like, "Oh, it wasn't actually a real bomb and he just wanted to get our attention," or something like that. But it's just a bad way to introduce yourself, really. Just getting off to the wrong foot,
Yes, I agree.
I don't really have anything against this chapter or anything like that. I think the internal strife between Kara members is kind of amusing though, because they're not so developed of a group that I care at this point.
Right.
I'm like, no, Kara falling apart with all of their members
that we know so little about, and one of them's already dead.
Yeah, and Delta just got... Apparently all you had to say is go to sleep, Delta, and she was like, oh, you son of a bitch.
No. Yeah, as a group, they aren't especially intimidating. They've got some very powerful members, obviously, but what have they really accomplished so far? They kidnapped Naruto briefly. Like, so, you know. I don't know, man. All right, so we're going to move on to Spy Family. Mission 24. Chapter opens up with Lloyd thinking about how Yor has been getting home late the last few days. And so he's like, I don't really have... I'm in no position to pry into what's going on, but, you know, and also, he's saying, like, we're not going to eat until, you know, Yor actually gets home. Anya reacts to this by going over to Bond and being like, show me tonight's dinner! Do the future thing! And Bond is just like,
I am not a toy for you to turn on and off at your childish whims. But okay, I shall show you something.
This is just you licking your butthole. Yes, but it is me licking my butthole from the future.
Understand, this will happen. There can be no way to truly stop it. Yeah, you're doing it now! Thus the future
I told you.
has come to pass.
It was inevitable.
We are all soldiers marching along a predetermined past.
I thought the point of your introduction was that I can change the future. Not this one!
Some things are possible to change. You can't fight against fate, Anya. Some buttholes must be licked.
While staring at me licking my butthole.
Watch me. Watch me as I do this.
I am projecting it directly into your mind so you cannot look away.
It's the only future you shall see.
Anyway, Yor shows up. Lloyd notices that she has a very grim look on her face, but more alarming still, there are cuts all over her hands. And Bond does see the future and shows it to Anya as Yor's like, oh, I'm not hungry, you two go ahead and eat. And the future that Anya sees is of Yor with her hands clutched over her face. Oh no, what could be happening? Now, I don't have any way of proving this, and I don't say this to pat myself on the back or anything like that. But when this happened, I did go, I hope that something happens here. And literally is what happens. But just because something is kind of predictable as it starts doesn't mean it's bad. Sometimes doing the obvious thing and just being really good and clever about the way you do it is the best way to go about it. Cough, cough, wrestling booking. So Anya's just like, oh, Mama's going to cry about something, but why? And Yor thinks to herself, she looks at her bandaged hands, if I fail at this, it could cost me my family. So it's the next day at Yor's workplace, and afterwards, Yor walks into a household. She's got a bag full of something that is dripping a dark liquid. And when the door opens, it's her coworker. And her coworker says, are we really doing this again today? Wait, is that... You squashed the tomatoes, Yor! What's wrong with you? Oh, it's just ingredients because she's teaching her how to cook. We get a flashback to a few days earlier where Yor was expressing to her coworkers that she wants to learn how to cook because the last time that she cooked, her husband spent the entire day on the toilet when he was actually on the mission with the bombs and stuff. Oh, and she's worried that if she doesn't get better, then it'll cost her marriage, which is going to, of course, expose her, make it dangerous, and people will find out she's a hitman. So nobody's really able to help her. The one that doesn't like her the most is just like, just take a class or something. But a male coworker comes by and is like, oh, she's a good cook right here. Yeah, she could teach you. And Yor bows to her and is like, please teach me. No, why would I? Come on, teach her how to cook. We can all meet at your place and you can teach her to cook. No! And of course, she ended up giving in eventually. So Yora is there. She's all pumped up, ready to learn, ties her hair back, and her coworker, Camilla, is just like, this is a living hell. And the male coworker is there too, and he's like, oh, come on, it's fine. Oh, fuck, you are going to taste the food for me. If we get poisoned, you're going to die, not me. And Yora's brother shows up. Hi, Yuri. Why are you here? Well, it turns out that he heard about this chance to try out her home cooking, and so he came over right away. So he's friendly to everyone there for helping out Yor, and so Yor tries to get some ingredients ready. We see that she's completely helpless at like every step of things. Trying to peel the potato reduces it to into bloody chunks. When she cuts something with a knife, she cuts stuff way too thin, and also slices through the cutting board because she's so powerful. So Camilla's like, why on earth would anyone ever marry you? And Yuri's like, how dare she speak to my sister this way? Shall I make her disappear? And then Camilla's like, at this rate, you should just divorce your husband. And Yuri's like, okay, maybe she's not so bad. He's thinking that Yora should do that. But Yora gets really close to her and is like, please, I'm begging you, if we get divorced, I don't have to worry about getting caught again. So Camilla kind of sunderes her and is like, just eat the ingredients. I'll walk you through seasoning everything. And the male coworker's just like, see, Camilla's got a soft side. And Yora's like, she's always seemed like a good person to me. Aw. And I don't know what this is supposed to be. There is a bowl with liquid and chunks of vegetable and bones and a fish head and one leek.
That's soup. That's not soup. That's soup.
Soup.
Yeah, that's soup. That's where you put stuff in there. That's soup.
Put it in there. Make sure that the water has coloration afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yuri digs in and immediately goes, oh, it's fantastic, as his body makes him throw up in order to protect himself from it. And he's literally eating it while he's throwing up. It's like, oh, it's so delicious. It's so good to eat. And they're like, is it good or bad? I can't tell. So Camille and the male coworker try it, and immediately they collapse. So it's really bad. So Yura apologizes. That she tries to make a minestrone, which ends up basically being a solid version of the thing that she just made. So Yuri has the exact same reaction, adding in, it's so good that I'm breaking out in a cold sweat. So it's probably bad. So eventually Camilla is like, was there something that your parents made for you that you still remember? And Yora's like, I don't really know. And Yuri recalls, well, I do remember her making some kind of stew, and it was warm, and it had a fried egg on top. So they try making that. And so, Camilla's walking her through the steps, and as she's preparing it, Camilla looks over and sees, how determined Yura looks to try and get this right. And she says, you seem different lately. Before you were kind of like a robot. You always had this dumb blank face. And Yora says, well, do you think it's because I got married? And Camilla's like, shut up! Just because you're married. I was just saying maybe you changed your makeup, baka. So the male coworker comes over and kind of breaks it up and says, this one actually does smell pretty good, so I think that you might actually have something. And Camilla tries it, and it's actually not bad. But Yuri says it's not quite the same way that he remembers it. So Camilla asks, where are you from? She says where it is, and she's like, okay, well, around those parts they would probably put some sour cream in it. And Yuri and Nora look at each other after they've tried it after this adjustment, and they've got this shocked look on their faces. Go back to the house. Lloyd is trying to teach Bond a bit, and he seems to actually be taking to training quite well, considering this was only a few days ago that they got him. So Bond's a good boy.
We knew that already.
Of course we knew that. Yeah. So Anya says, like, I'm hungry, Papa. I can't wait any longer because it's getting so late. But Yor shows up, and she's got a bag of ingredients with her as she announces that she's going to be making dinner tonight, which, of course, Anya and Lloyd are kind of terrified by the prospect of. But Yor reveals that she has been taking cooking lessons, And that's, of course, why she's been showing up late. And Bond is, smells the cooking and is, apparently intrigued by it. She prepares it. It's a little bit, the egg's a little bit runny, but they dig into it and they're like, it's good. And they say that they really like it. And Yor looks upon her family eating the food that she's prepared for them. And she covers her face and starts crying tears of happiness. Aww. And Bond is there and he's staring at everyone like a weird doggo.
He's like, why is no one reading my mind? I'm about to tell you of the important future where I'm about to lick my butthole while you all eat dinner.
I demand that you pay attention to me.
Hurry! There's no time!
It is about to happen. I must show you the warning of what is about to happen right now.
The grim portent of what is to fall is upon you.
This is your last chance.
No, fuck it. Oh, bad dog.
No, but I'm a good dog. I was trying to warn you.
I gave you ample warning. Now you must deal with the consequences of what you have allowed to come to pass.
The consequences are that you will give me your soup.
The consequences is I assume there will be scraps for me.
So they're like, why are you crying? And Yor just says, oh, I just feel so relief, and looks on your faces. And she says, I thought I was doing this just to protect my job, but hearing their praise and seeing them smile, I never imagined it would make me feel this happy. And she's like, I feel a bit more confident that now I can be a good wife and a good mother. And Lloyd says, I can't wait to see what you make next. And Yor's like, good, because I made something else too. This one's a Yor Forger original. And they're like, yay! And they eat it and collapse immediately. So maybe don't experiment, Yor. No. But this is a very sweet chapter. There's a few silly moments in it, but it was more just kind of heartwarming than anything, and I really liked it. So
I'm a bit up and on this chapter. I do like that we got to meet this coworker, and I do like that they have this kind of relationship. I'm not a fan of the bait and switch. Like, I saw a vision of her crying. Oh, but it was tears of happiness, because it kind of implies that Anna saw a future where her mother was crying and just didn't give a shit. Because she recognized, she's like, Mama's gonna cry, but why? Never follows up on it. I was like, I understand you want to set the precedent that not every vision that they see for Bond is necessarily going to be a doomsday scenario, but it does feel weird that she would see her mother crying and there's not any level of concern whatsoever beyond interesting. Anyway, back to what's for dinner, dog.
What is going to happen? What food is he going to make for me? Oh, hey, Bond Man's on. Yay! She is 6.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could say it would be the callous indifference of a child, but it just felt a little bit strange that there wasn't more to it.
All right, Chris.
All right,
let's move on to Eden Zero.
Let's talk about Eden Zero, which is not loading up for me, despite the fact it was already loaded up. Hey, chapter 87, 4 on 4. And we get a little in-depth character file, number 1, so I guess we're going to see it. We find out Shiki is basically good at everything. His intelligence isn't very high, nor is his marksmanship. But his love for friends is fucking off the chart. I assume that's the stat that changes for each character, but who knows? Anyways, they've broken into Drac and Joe's hideout. They're saying hey, what are we going to do? This is a really dangerous place. Pino's calculating Drac and Joe's battle prowess based on internet sources.
See, according to the rumors I've heard on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I was according to Wikipedia, you can't beat him.
Look, his bar's bigger than yours.
Exactly. But Rebecca basically says, we're not trying to beat him. We're just trying to rescue Lobelia, and we think we can do that. And Weiss also says, oi, with this guy's super rich, how about we take some war trophies? They land. The Elemental 4 out there, all standing in a line, which is a very pertinent position for a sniper to be taking. Front line alongside everybody else.
Everyone else should be holding up a sign that points to him and is like, this guy's a sniper.
He has nothing but an enormous sniper rifle. It's so fucking stupid. I know what they're trying to do, because they dropped the 4 shining stars down, and each of the shining stars is going to take on a member of the elemental four.
Yes.
And we see Hermit goes immediately after the guy with the sniper rifle. I don't care what his name is. And she immediately like disassembles his sniper rifle. And it's like, why were you on the front? Like, it's the entire point of the sniper rifle is that you don't stand on the front line. You could have been like 6 miles away and just shot her in the face when she landed. Why did you guys do like your cool, like, we're all in a line move when that's not even how you're introduced? Whatever. They're all gonna square up. Rebecca, or not Rebecca,
Homura?
Witch is about to fight the crying dude. Sister's fighting Dao, who is being
the torture guy,
who's being absurdly creepy, and Homura is about to fight against Sylph, but she has her battle suit this time, her battle dress. So maybe that'll be the defining feature. Doesn't look that much different on her than what her normal attire is. So
because she's always wearing different sorts of kimonos and stuff.
Yeah, so I'll be curious to see what the main change there is. But yeah, it's going to be 4-on-4.
The 2-page spread of the 4, Demon General, the 4 shining stars is a pretty cool group shot. So
they fly up towards the Dracojo's tower. A bunch of missiles are shooting them. They're like, oh no, I don't think we can take it. So Shiki creates a shield of anti-gravity around it. It reflects all the missiles back. Dracojo's like, huh? I guess that's him now recognizing, oh, you have the Satan gravity. So we haven't gotten to that part exactly. So, yeah, it's very significant for him to, I guess, see that there. They land on side the roof, and they get out, and who should be there but Master Noah, who's like, I've been expecting you, Rebecca. So, based on the fact that he's expecting her, would lead us to believe that he knows pretty much everything about her abilities. We know in the previous jump, he sold her out to Jack and Joe. But maybe he's not as I don't know. Maybe he expected she would jump or something like that. So who really knows?
Speaking of Dragon Joe, there's some of the people in the Discord were pointing out about him in this chapter, which is that as all the missiles are flying towards the ship that Rebecca is piloting, one of his slug assistants is like, isn't number 30 on that ship? And Dragon Joe's just like, doesn't matter. If a little thing like this would kill the cat, then I don't need its powers. So,
and ironically, she escapes the scenario by not using her powers whatsoever.
Right. So,
a third-party Drac and Joe apparently did not have enough information about Save the Ship.
Very consistent character.
Yeah.
Drac and Joe.
This was not a very good chapter.
Yeah. And a couple of cool moments. I actually do really like, Shiki getting out on the outside of the ship in order to summon a repelling shield around it. Like I said, I like the group's pose, but in terms of like story progression and stuff like that, it's just kind of like, oh, okay. So, yeah. Mashle, Chapter 9, Mash, Van Dead, and the Big Brother. We get an explanation about magic users and the lines in their faces, what those signify, and basically those who have multiple marks, the number of marks grows in accordance with their magical capacity. Double line magic users are only one out of every 100,000 people. They are considered chosen by magic itself. So we see, in this one, the fight continuing as before. Mash is fighting through gravity magic and stuff like that. And as he attacks, what was his name? Lance? I think it was.
I think it was Lance.
So a pendant of his goes flying off while they're scuffling, and it lands at Mash's feet. And he picks it up, and there is a picture of a little girl inside of a locket attached to it. And he just looks at it, and he looks up at the guy, and he's like, "You're a pedophile." Very sudden conclusion there. And he's like, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Oh, so you're going to become one? No, that's my little sister." And Mash is like, that doesn't make it any better.
I just love him saying, "You're a pedo. I've got to tell the police," as he's turning to leave.
So he's like, "Give that back." Fine. And so Lance says, "Hey, Mushroom Head, what's the most precious thing in the world?" And Mash is like, "Oh, wow, you're really putting me on the spot here. Um, cream puff? No, it's not cream puffs. Life? No. Love, freedom, cream puff. Just the cream puffs again. And he's like, it's not hard, you know. The answer is as obvious as 1 + 1 = 2, or blue and yellow making green. The most precious thing in the world is my little sister. And Mash is just kind of like, everyone's got their priorities, I guess. So he says, you're just another waste of time. I'm going to drop this ball with your friends in it off this cliff, and then I'll speed up its fall with my magic. You'll try and grab the ball to save your friends, and that's when I'll attack you. Sorry. But he thinks to himself, I can become a monster for my sister's sake. All for her. We get a flashback to when he was younger. He showed up at home, and his little sister was scolding him for having gotten in a fight because he had bruises on his face. And he kept on lying and lying, like, no, I didn't get into a fight. And he was like, I just tripped. And she's like, you're a bad liar. You're not even trying. You know, I heard you saved a kid who was being bullied, but the bullies tried to get back at you, didn't they? But you know what? You may be clumsy, but you're awfully kind, and that's why I love you. And I was like, you do? It's like, she's your sister. But then one day, Anna fell very ill and the disease that she has will take her magic as well as her magic mark, and it's incurable. At best, the doctors estimate she has 5 years left. So their parents say if she loses her magic, we'll have to hand her over to the government. I'm afraid we'll have no choice. And so they say to Lance, this is for your future as well. Lance thinks, how can I accept something this cruel? My sister didn't do anything wrong. So he turns to their parents and says that they aren't their parents anymore. And he says, I'll do it. I'll make sure that she's... He thinks to himself, it's the Bureau of Magic that made this rotten system, so I'll become a divine visionary, and then I'll save you. For your sake, Anna, I'll become. And so he, as he said, releases the bottle that has Mash's friends in it, uses gravity magic to speed it up, and he turns, all right, now what are you going to do? And Mash has stripped off his uniform, and he's wearing what looks like a wetsuit and boxers underneath it. Gotta have some dignity, I guess. Uh-huh. So he takes a starting stance like a track and field runner, and he declares hamstring magic, which is very silly. And Lance is like, what the fuck is he talking about? And he declares his technique, Big Bang Dash. I can't feel them. I won't lose. And there's a huge explosion as he takes off and dashes straight down the side of the cliff. Lance looks behind him and is like, oh, where is he? And already Mash has already gotten the bottle and retrieved it and is back in the place that he was before because he's so fast. So Lance is like, oh my God, how do you do that? Is he using physical enhancement magic? I can't falter now. I must help my sister. And he readies his wand to attack, but Mash says, hey, let's stop this because you don't seem like a bad guy, so I don't think we should be fighting. The bottle you dropped is empty. You dropped a fake. And he walks up to Lance and just immediately swipes the real bottle away from him and is like, we're done. And Lance's like, but you're giving up your chance to win my silver coins. Why are you doing this to mess with me? And Mashle says, I guess that I'm just not the type to make rational decisions. Maybe I'm just clumsy. And Lance thinks back to what his sister Anna said, which is, you may be clumsy, but you're kind, and that's why I love you. So he's like, all right, I'm heading back. We'll stop the fight here, but I did make the bet with you, so take it. And he tosses Lance, I guess, both of his silver coins, because he had two, but I think he only tosses one, so I don't know. So Mash wonders to himself what would happen if they had fought for real. But he sets his friends free, and the last thing we see is Lance just going as he walks off. So hey, Mash has a little bit of a friendly rival, it looks like.
Yeah. And I like this chapter a lot. I kind of mentioned last week the thing that kind of held it back is there weren't really many jokes in it, and this one, like, I'm still fine with there being the serious moments. It's just the chapter's so much better for the couple moments of silliness in there with the pedo joke and then hamstring magic. Like, right. Those are just the things that like I need from Mashle to kind of keep it with its identity.
And also, I think that this was the dramatic moments in this were more effective than the ones last time because they're like, hey, we're learning about this character and what motivates them and stuff. So it's quite nice. Mission Yozakura family, Mission 29, Yozakura Ghost Stories. We see that Tayo is training with the older sister. So, hooray! The thing that I kept on saying is happening a little bit in this one, because this chapter is all about her. We do, however, actually cut over to Shion, the hacker sister, who is trying to hack the marble that came out of the box that Tayo had. And she's having difficulty actually hacking into it by she's basically playing Biohazard as her way of hacking this one. And she's having a very difficult time getting through it, but she's enjoying the challenge, it seems. Futaba, Tayo is watching, zombies attacking an avatar who looks kind of like him and is like, "Ugh, this is gonna, I really don't like horror," but I bet Futaba isn't bothered. I mean, it's not like she would be scared. He looks over Futaba and she is completely freaked out. And we cut to a little bit later. Futaba's huddled in a blanket with just her eyes looking out. And Mutsumi explains that Futaba is afraid of scary things like ghosts and that kind of thing. And Mutsumi explains, she's strong enough to beat zombies and monsters. They don't bother her. But ghosts and curses can't be fought with martial arts, so she's afraid of them. So, makes perfect sense. And so basically for a couple of days after that, Futaba is just, freaking out over stuff. There's also Shion says that there's been some weird stuff happening around the mansion lately. Like maybe there's a ghost that was behind the place since the house was first built. There will be times when their dog will bark at the walls, even though there's nothing there. So she's like, hey, maybe there's some sort of ghost here. Ooh. And Mutsumi scolds her because Futaba's squeezing her head. She's so freaked out. Tayo and Mutsumi just go about their day with Futaba just clinging on to Mutsumi and stuff. So time goes by. Mutsumi is like, all right, I know what'll get you to calm down, Futaba. I'll read to you until you go to sleep. So we'll read Momotaro Without Honor and Humanity, which is a peach with blood coming out of it. Okay. Yeah. So she starts to read this story, which is, about a horrible war between crime lords that are also ogres and humans. And she starts reading it and falls asleep after reading 2 paragraphs. So Tayo starts taking over instead and reads it for Futaba. Futaba seems to calm down. She really enjoys it because she's like, oh yeah, this reminds me of when we read this as a kid. And she says, Mom used to read this to us a lot, and back then I wasn't afraid of anything. But when my mother died, I realized no matter how strong you are, some things are out of your control. And no matter how much I trained, strength didn't matter in some situations. It mercilessly took away things that were precious to me. The stronger you get, the more scared you become. And she says, I'm afraid and I lack confidence that I can protect everyone, so I'm a failure as the eldest daughter of the family. So it's better to let them all have a laugh and think that I'm afraid of ghosts than let them see this pathetic side of me. Maybe it's because you're my brother-in-law that I can talk to you about it. So thanks for listening. And so they start to have a little bonding moment. And then Kyoichiro comes in. So he falls through the ceiling and he's like, oh yeah, I've added spaces in the walls all over this house so that I could always watch over Mutsumi wherever she is. I call them the Protect Mutsumi spaces. And so Tayo realizes, so the reasons that, there's been weird noise all over the place and why Goliath has been crawling at the walls. And Kyoichiro's like, yeah, I was lurking around after the renovations. So Kyoichiro starts to leave and Futaba grabs him and is like, you can't hide from me. You've been making noises on purpose to freak me out, preying upon my fear of ghosts. And Kyoichiro's like, please don't hurt me. And Futaba's like, I'm going to hurt you. And the next morning when Mutsumi wakes up, Kyoichiro's tied in a knot and their dog is pissing on him.
Yeah, it's a great first 13 pages. Pretty good. You get hey, cool, finally get a chance to focus on some other members of the family again, and you forget that they all have different personalities.
Tayo establishing a more of a bond with one of them and learning that, hey, they're not just their gimmick. There's a little bit more to them and what drives them. And, Tayo can take that and carry it forward with them. Hey, Kyoichiro's here. He's a sister con.
It's not even that necessarily. It's that they can't find something for Koichiro to do that isn't just antagonizing the other characters because the mangaka finds him really funny when he's doing that. That's the only thing that the manga seems to have any ability to do with this character. Because you thought after last week, maybe he would have changed slightly. Maybe he would be more like open to the other characters. And I guess he's not specifically antagonizing fucking Tayo this chapter. But he's just doing it to one of his other family members.
Yeah.
And you could say kind of like a sibling would do. Except all he does is this.
Yeah.
This is all he does. So it's just the worst personality trait of him being repeated again. And it's fucking exhausting.
Even if the chapter had just ended with him being like, oh yeah, I've been lurking around in the crawl spaces and stuff like that, and Futaba gets pissed off at him and beats him up, that would be less annoying than them going the route of, oh, he was deliberately messing with Futaba because he's an asshole. That's basically it.
Yeah.
So, all right, Chris. You know what they say. All good things must come to an end. Also, Samurai 8 must come to an end. So,
Jesus.
This is the final chapter of Samurai 8, The Tale of Hachimaru, chapter 43, which is titled Pandora's Box. So, Ata and Hachimaru are clashing. Were clashing, rather. Hachimaru was apparently struck fatally by Ata. However fatally a samurai can be struck. But Anne's body is glowing extremely brightly. And all of the souls that were gathered around Hachimaru's key thing kind of bond together and form a new body around him. One with a big samurai armor gear and stuff seems to start appearing around him. And Ada's master Kala contacts him and warns him that the H particles are coming to a complete halt. As the area around her becomes immovable, the boundaries of space-time itself are shifting. Be careful. And so Ada's like, is time passing only around her and nowhere else? Sure, I guess. So also as a result of this, the pocket dimension that Dharma and the other one were imprisoned in opens up, and they're able to get out. And now Hachimaru is standing beside Anne, and they're out seemingly in the vacuum of space in the debris of Ada's ship, it looks like. Hachimaru is in full samurai regalia. Anne is surrounded by this flaming aura. She's got very long hair now. And Hachimaru says, I've acquired every ability in the Kanguyasha style. Cool.
Yep.
Ada's like, seems you've grown quite a bit. And Hachimaru says, well, this is how old I would have been if we had actually run the entire length of the story that Kishimoto intended and had a flashback, had some flashbacks and had some time skips. But now we're just kind of skipping to the end now. I have the power to prove it because now I am the warrior god Fudumyo. And Ada's like, how dare you slander that name, young pup? And Hachimaru says, young pup, huh? Well, the thing is, time is relative. Don't assume that you and I live at the same speed. Plus, all these... I'm sorry, this was my favorite part of the chapter. Plus, all these definitions, Bushi, samurai, fighting styles, warrior god, none of those mean anything.
Thank you.
I know it's the whole philosophy that was trying to be built through this series coming in terms of it's how you look at it and how the world looks at you that determines everything, blah-de-blah-de-blah. But after all the lore dumps and exposition, being told, none of that means anything.
Maybe we shouldn't have done it then.
So, and Hachimaru says, they're nothing but a small shift in a tiny part of life. Just a decorative title that makes you act important. Because this isn't all in how you view me, all things considered, right? And even that depends on the viewer. Former Kangoyasha style, apprentice to Master Dharma, traitor and member of the Usasama style, out of the peerless. You probably have more, even fancier titles you could trot out. But from my perspective, you're the man who killed my father. Hey, that's pretty cool. You know, didn't get a whole lot of focus going into this battle. But yes, that's the thing that connects Ada to Hachimaru. So it's good to have that called back to. Then we cut to either a flashback or a mental connection. It's a private conversation between Hachimaru and Anne in their own little dimension thing. And Hachimaru warns her that this is going to cause him to vanish. He says, I've cut loose the flow of time at the moment so that I exist in this dimension by borrowing the samurai souls of Ikaku's group. And Anne's like, well, I'm going to be lonely. What about your promise to me? And Hachimaru says, I'll simply become waves that drift through the universe. Man, I'll still be protecting you. Anne asks if she'll be able to see him again, and Hachimaru says, whenever you try to see me, you'll always find me right in front of you. It's like, oh, that's kind of nice.
It's a very sweet sentiment. I really like the idea.
Nice.
It's like, that's what I'm going to become, is just waves that drift through the universe, but I'm still protecting you. It's very sweet.
Yeah. So anytime you want to see me, I'll appear before you. Anyway, check out my stats.
Everything's really high. Don't look at that bottom one. Everything's really high.
So all of his stats have become an infinity. And now I can say, for a fact, we never learned what most of these meant. So they're all really high. That's all you have to know. I will say I also like the little touch now that I realize that Hachimaru has his old glasses back on. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of like not afraid to show her how he used to be anymore. So Hachimaru takes Anne's hand and a little icon appears of the technique that Hachimaru is going to use, the shooting star sword. And Ada's like, he's going to call forth a shooting star.
This is my favorite moment of the chapter. Is the next page. They're like, and this fight was happening. You're like, oh man, we really just had to zoom through everything.
Goku was fighting some guy.
No, I don't think that's Goku, is it? I thought that was isn't that fucking what's his name's teacher? That's fucking Daruma's teacher, isn't it? Is it? I think so. There was like a female teacher he had, the old master of Daruma.
You're right.
And and it was just like, and she's fighting the old ninja dude, like wizard. You're like,
dead.
Yeah. You're like, all right, I guess this was happening too in the side.
She says, you don't seem to be able to see it yet, Kala, which is Ada's master. As if, and Kala's like, as if I'd ever rely upon your mind's eye. And she says, well, that's true. It is still developing. I suppose I can't blame you for not sensing it. And there's a brrr. And they see a bling in the distance. And someone says, the 7 true keys will come together very soon. I guess this is still Dharma's master. They are but 7 tiny dots spread across space, but one day they will connect and form a line that you can see. And this time we do see Goku and Ichigo and
other characters who would have been important.
Hang on, Ryu and Ryu's friend, forget his real name, and oh gosh, I've forgotten their name already. Not
Danashi.
Danashi, yes, and Anne and 2 more people. They are people, yes. So presumably, I guess this is an indicator of like, oh yes, these were all going to be the 7 stars. I guess except for Anne. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and I think they're kind of taking over as this idea that she's the samurai that leads the future. But
the other 7.
Yeah, obviously we knew Hachimaru was one of them, so I wonder if one of these wasn't planned to. But
Ichigo was supposed to be one of them, so
yeah, maybe it was just the idea she would have matured into. I thought she was already kind of pinpoint though as one of them. Sanda
she was.
wasn't, or
Sanda was not.
Sansa.
Ryu was one.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm trying to think because Goku, Ichigo, and Sanda all have, and Nanashi obviously all have characters in their names for numbers. Because Ichi is one, San is four, I think. Ni, San. Sanda is three. San. Nana is seven. Hachi is eight. Go is five, I think. So I think that I'm not sure about Ryu though. So unless it's like an alternate, like
he might have a full
maybe
name we didn't ever learn
he might have a
either.
different name.
He
Yeah.
had amnesia, so I don't even know if we actually his name was Ryu.
My point is that I mean there was the numbering thing going through their names, so maybe it was the plan from the beginning for all of them. Anyway, so Dharma's master says the 7 true keys will come together very soon. There, but tiny dots separated across space. But one day they'll connect and form a line that you can see, like a very long shooting star holding the wishes of every soul in the galaxy. And Kara says, "I see." So Dharma looks down at this thing, or Kara does. I don't know. The reason I'm able to stay in human form and you've grown so much is because we are in a separate time space. Hachimaru says that. Okay. And so, Dharma says that. Damn it! It's so hard to tell! The other one says, surpassing time and space. Hachimaru is a being of pure H particles now, whatever those were supposed to be. And says, this is Hachimaru's key. He might still be inside. So Dharma connects to it and he sees 7 holes in a cube. Could this be? That's it. That's what this means. It was here in this inner space. Hachimaru, it's you. Your Pandora's box. And the box that he looks at with the holes in it has beams of light shooting out in different directions. And he's like, those are the locations of your companions. Thank you, Hachimaru. And so all of Hachimaru's companions gather together at the site of his father's grave. And Anne thinks to herself as she prays before the grave, I've reported the news to your father. Now we're going to search for the others. And she's presented with Hachimaru's katana. And so she ties it onto her back, ties her hair back up in a ponytail, and she's wearing this kimono. And she says, hey, how do I look? And Sanda says, like a charming princess who's gotten even more beautiful, if you ask me. And Ryu says, who's asking you? Which is nice. But Ichigo says, you look like a gallant samurai. And Nanashi says, just like Hachimaru, in fact. And so they say, it's time to leave. The next journey is calling us. And so they all head off into space. And they had many more adventures. And Hachimaru was dead and not dead at the same time.
He's evolved past the concept of living as we know it.
This is actually not a bad chapter.
No, I mean, there's actually a lot of really cool things in this. And there's a lot of really sweet sentiments that like are kind of expressed in one concentrated moment that like is pretty enjoyable. It like the only bad parts of it are kind of the parts that were forced upon it to be like, wait, what's this fight's happening over here? What's this thing doing? What's going on? You're like, oh, it's just because we had to slam together what probably would have been like an 80 chapter arc into a single page, like a single chapter, because like, all right, we have to wrap
chapter
this.
arc that was not supposed to be the final arc kind of thing.
Yeah. So I do actually think that as Samurai it goes, I think this is actually a pretty good like final chapter. I do kind of like how Hachimaru's story kind of comes to an end in this very, very odd way, but it's a very satisfying and different way. And I do like how it sets up the idea of like An is sort of the hero of this story now.
Yeah.
And they have this team and they still have adventures to go to, you know? So
I would have liked to have seen an actual story like that explains, you know, that have a story being told where it's more obvious that this is the way that things are going to end, like actually have an idea of like, because this happens with Anne, and it's like, yeah, I guess I could buy that, but if it were a longer one, I'm sure that we would have actually had more signs pointing in that direction that this is the fate that was going to be meeting her. A couple of things I want to note since this is the final chapter of Samurai 8. One is that, unbelievably, there are some people who are very upset that this series got canceled. We found them, Chris. We found the people who love Samurai 8. They were there all along. Yeah. It's just that none of them were buying volumes, I guess.
Well, there's only so many of them. Hey,
there's only so many of them. They're an endangered species.
To be 100% completely fair, those people could be the same people who would turn to us and be like, we found them. The cross-managed fans. They're out there.
Yes.
Like, yes, that was us. So
that was us.
I get
That's
it.
True.
Like, to be fair.
I'm not hating on you for loving something.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the reason why the series is being canceled is because this did not catch on with nearly enough people as well as it caught on with you. Sorry, this is what happens when you get into manga and you love it from chapter 3. Is that 90% of the time you get your heart broken.
Yeah, it's unfortunate too, but hey, the writer behind it, Kishimoto, he's not going to go anywhere. I'm sure there'll be another. It might be some years before it happens, because I mean it took some time between Naruto ending and finally putting this out. But I'm sure we will see Crossmatch. I'm sure we'll see Kishimoto writing another series.
There was some stuff that was getting linked in the Discord about this, people's reaction to it, and also there was like an interview with Kishimoto where he like explained that he wanted to do a sci-fi series because he felt he had the opportunity to do one, because it's very difficult to get a sci-fi series off the ground because of the exposition that's required in it. But he thought that he could use his leverage and his clout in order to pull it off. Turns out he still wasn't good enough at doing the balance between all of that freaking explanation and exposition and stuff. But yeah, it's a shame. I'm sure that we're gonna get another good sci-fi series. I mean, World Trigger did come along at one point, and it's not in Jump anymore, but it's still running. So
yeah, look, and there's tons of different series. Like, I know that a lot of the issue right now is currently that a lot of people are like, Samurai 8 ended. Jump has nothing that's worth it anymore. Rage against the dying of the light, essentially. And I would say to those people, I'm sorry that something you really enjoyed has ended. I know the feeling and the pain of that. I would keep yourself optimistic and keep looking forward. It's unfortunate. The Shonen Jump machine can be a very cruel mistress at times, and there are plenty fantastic series that died way too early on. I myself cannot necessarily say that Samurai 8 was one of them for me, but I know plenty others. I would say keep your mind open and keep reading series, because you'll, I'm sure, find other series you like in time. Also, just read Chainsaw Man. I'm 90% certain everybody who enjoyed Samurai 8 for the reasons they did are going to love the shit out of Chainsaw Man anyway.
Read Chainsaw Man. It'll fill the Samurai 8 shaped hole in your heart.
Yes.
One last note, because people keep on mentioning it in the chat. There was no Send the Silent in this chapter. What the fuck? None. None.
He was finally silent, Nick. He was
finally silent.
He's like, guys, you know what? I've said my piece. I'm going to head out. I have nothing else to add to all this.
He just keeps on delaying his exit, though. So I'm going to let you guys get to what you're doing. And it's cool that you're like the protagonist now. Just want to say, don't cry for me. I'm going to go my own way and you go yours. So, parting is such sweet sorrow. So, come more things.
He's like, hey, you know what? We had some good times together. Female character who was my princess. We had some great moments together. Can't remember your name, but hey, we really connected there. Dog dude, I think we were supposed to arrest you, but hey, we didn't. So, works out well for that. What else? Everybody else just like 7 massive space battles.
He like comes over to Nanashi. Hair over the face person. Remember when we've never talked before. Oh, thank God.
Phew, man, I thought I was going to be the asshole there. Anyways.
That's what they call me, the forgetful, Send the socially awkward.
Oh God, poor Sen.
Samurai 8 is dead, but Sen the Silent will live forever.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
that should be the last page. It says Samurai 8 is ended. Thank you for reading. But then like in tiny little letters at the end, but Sen the Silent will return.
All right. Zipman.
What a transition into Zipman. Like, so next week we're gonna find out what another series ending looks like.
Basically. Chapter 15, Fighting Brothers. Kaname and Koshiro are fighting with each other. Boom, bang, bip, bap,
We just had the chapter. That's all it was a big zip zap zoodly boop boop bop boop.
Eventually China shows up on the scene and Zipman Weiss goes to attack her, but Zipman's head goes through his chest and grabs his zipper through his chest from behind. And Koshiro's like, how dare you use China as bait? That's impossible for you. And Kaname says, if it's for you, we decided we'd do it together, not alone. And the director's like, I didn't think he would lose, but at least I got some good data I can transfer to the backup suit. Return to me, Koshiro! And he gets the mirror thing out again. And Koshiro's zipper starts to glow, but Kaname says, I won't ever let you go again! And he attaches it to the Zipman suit, and that's where the chapter ends. There is no fucking way that this series is not ending next week. Seriously.
It's definitely ending, and it's sad because it's not a bad chapter. Like, this has been a conflict I would have liked to have seen at some point, but yeah, I mean, what can you really say?
This is not the way the series was supposed to end. Well, this is the way it was supposed to end, but this is not the way it was supposed to end.
It's not the speed at which it was supposed to end.
Right.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about We Never Learn, Nick. Question 152, X equals Thumbelina Supercomputer Part 2. So we open up several months earlier from last chapter in spring. Uega's working at the udon shop. He's talking about how Ogata and Sekijo are roommates now. And Nick's gone, guys. We can just say whatever we want. Sekijo's like, have you seen my girlfriend? Because I love Ogata, and I can't wait to try to marry her. You hear that, guys? She said it. That means Nick owes me a pizza. Unfortunately, that's not how it works, but if you guys all just, like, buy into it, like, if you really build it up, then I think he has to do it. I mean, what else is he going to do? So, yeah, she basically says, hey.
Buy into the false propaganda. See, I was listening the whole time. You can't pull one over on me.
No! We basically hear them saying, like, oh, yeah, we got this room, this apartment together. It's 3 rooms. It's it's like super close to the station, and it's only 20,000 yen. It's crazy. And Yue gives me like, God damn it, it's that fucking apartment, isn't it? So, Yuega goes in, sees the little girl, basically is like, oh, hey. Honestly, nothing really happens in this chapter. I guess I could just skip over this. He finds the little girl.
Here's the thing. It's not that nothing happened in this chapter.
So
nothing happened in the last. Yeah, nothing happened in the last chapter. Because there's a little bit we learn in this one, but literally everything that was established in the previous chapter is reestablished in this one.
Yeah.
So there's really no point to the previous week.
Yeah. So like the little girl's there. Basically, is like, oh, hey, someone's here. He's like, oh, well. She's a friendly ghost. I'll just introduce them. Maybe they can befriend her. Tries to introduce her. Yuega, what are you talking about? There's no one there. And she's like, oh, I guess if people don't have a strong sense of my presence, they can't really see me. There's some weird jokes, and then they go out.
Yes.
I guess this is a very strong ghost because she can leave the house and like follow them on shopping dates, essentially.
She explains that she has to be near the residence of the apartment in order to be able to leave its boundaries. So,
she says specifically, I can go anywhere I want as long as I'm with the residents of the apartment.
Right.
So
it's part of the curse.
Yeah, it's such a weird rule to be like, she can go on these sexy dates too. Ogata's trying on swimsuits. Sekijo
emphasis on sexy. Yeah.
There's a couple poses I'm like, was this Ogata posing like this, or is the camera choosing to create this pose?
She literally does the Bobby Lashley pose
Yeah.
at one point. So where she's like, "Look at my ass." So it doesn't. I mean, she's not adjusting the suit or anything.
Yeah,
So
she's just mooning the crowd, Nick. Boo! Boo you, Intercontinental Champion Bobby Lashley and mouthpiece Leo Rush. Boo!
what a time capsule that is, actually. It's so weird that it's like, yeah, what a very particular time that was now.
That was only like a year ago, too. Like, I'm not referring to like 7 years ago. You're just like, yeah.
That was like January to April of last year, and that was it. Like,
it's this weird thing where we're like, Bobby Lashley gets to do an entirely new program and identity once every 6 months.
Anyway, he's fucking this man's wife now.
Oh, man. The cucking.
Anyway, that storyline's over now. Except it's back because Aleister Black needed an opponent and we couldn't put him in the Battle Royal.
Basically, Uega's like, they all look really great, but he's not, looking at her super close. She's like, can you look at me when you say that? Or is this too stimulating? Oh, I thought that was you slapping at the air in anger. You're like, no! Ha!
Yeah, that's it. Well, because no, what would have really made me angry is if instead of Uega there, that would have been Sekijo there. Because then you would have been like,
well, I mean, her nose is shooting full of blood right now, but whatever. We're in this weird super timeline where the only way for me to get this free pizza is for her to just be like, oh, God, I love you. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
If I remember correctly, the conditions of the bet were that she has to be in love with Ogata, not that she has to be a lesbian.
It's such a ticky-tack way of doing this, but all right, it's fine.
It's not!
Anyway.
So gay person's in love with Chris, is that it?
Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, Ogata's trying on a swimsuit. She screams. She pulls Uega in and, like, shoves him against her chest. And she's like, what are you talking about? She's like, I saw something in the mirror and there's a spooky ghost. And they're basically like, yep, the ghost can be seen by other people, basically, but only in mirrors, and it always looks terrifying. Or people sometimes get snap pictures of her and it always looks like that.
Yes.
Sekijo shows up and is like, I found a bikini. It's practically all straps, maximum destructo power, and you can see the bikini, and it literally is like string and like a Band-Aid in the middle, which is like, okay. And she's like, wait, where are they? They're not here. They're actually wrapped up in the curtain, and they're super close. And Uega's like, oh man, I didn't really think about it. Gata's like, did I need to hide too? I mean, I was the one using the changing room. And he's like, oh, I guess that was dumb of me. And she's like, oh no, but this kind of feels like we're boyfriend and girlfriend.
Let me tell you something, Chris. The number of dates that Nicole and I have been on where we go into the changing room together and wrap ourselves up in the changing room curtains.
It's like, that's usually what. When do you do that, Nick? Is it like fourth date material, or do you like to tease it out a little bit? You're like, I'm a gentleman. I don't do that until the dozenth date.
Okay.
Anyway, their shopping trip has ended, but Ogata says payback for before, and she reaches out and she wraps her pinky around Uega's. And I assume it's Uega saying that this is our game. Ever since that Christmas night, the two of us continue to play our own little game.
So this is basically saying that the timeline pretty much diverged at even a completely different point than when the Ephemeral Mermaid arc began. So it's basically actually going back and saying, no. See, that all that stuff didn't actually happen that way. So this is very much like, alternative continuity. I think that this has me more interested in this story than the previous one did, because the previous one had nothing to do with Uega and Ogata's relationship, save saying, Ogata is the girl that Uega ends up with in this storyline. So this one establishing different stuff. Okay, that's fine. But I do have to say, the previous chapter was basically completely meaningless after seeing this one. That said, this one also had some absurdly shameless fan service. Probably the most shameless, honestly, that we've seen thus far, or at least in a while. Most shameless not having to do with Kirisu.
Yeah, I was gonna say we've seen some pretty shameless fan service before, but it's been a while since we've gotten something to that extent.
So, and also there's just more stuff involving the ghost girl, and so yeah. Didn't really care too much for this one, but at least it is like, okay, then we're going to do things a little differently now. So, all right. Dr. Stone, Z equals 144, Ryusui and Gen versus Senku and Kohaku. It's time for the poker battle between those four people to decide what route they're going to be taking to cross the Pacific Ocean to go to North America. And also, there are also some people who are actually placing bets on who's going to win amongst the bystanders. I like how, Suika's there and she's betting and she's like, I don't know what all this means, but Ryusui seems better at games, so I'm betting on him. So, and immediately, of course, it breaks into a who can cheat. Can Gen cheat when Kohaku is watching him and Senku's analyzing what he does. So, he tries to stack the deck and Kohaku stops him. And she's like, I'm pretty sure that you put a specific card on top of the deck. So I'll admit that I was wrong if the top card isn't the Ace of Hearts. And of course it is. And Gen's like, oh, what a coincidence. Oh, and there are some very basic card shark tricks that are explained in this chapter. So
there's one though. So like when they tried to be like, here's another card trick you could do, sprinkle some salt on top of your deck. And I was like,
I was like,
what the hell are you talking about? And they're like, oh, well, that'll help the beetle in your sleeve react to the sugar. I was like, oh, we're not supposed to use that one. Like, I sat there, I was like, what the hell are they talking about? One, how am I not going to be super noticeable sprinkling sugar on one of the cards? But two, they were like, hey, that beetle that's up your sleeve, it's going to react to the sugar.
Yeah. Kohaku catches Gen trying to do that as Gen's like, I'm not touching the cards, though. And Kohaku's like, you can't move your hands at all now because she doesn't trust him. And sure enough, yes, the beetle in his fucking sleeve eventually emerges when Senku finally figures out what the hell he was trying to do. And Kohaku's like, just how many tricks do you have? And Gen's like, oh, that's it. That's all the tricks I have. Look, there's the deck. Check the whole thing. Check the whole deck one by one. And Senku realizes all of our eyes, Kohaku's mind, the audience's, all of them are on the deck. And so Ryusui has a hand of cards, of course, and he goes all in. And they're like, oh man, it's going to be the final hand now. And in that moment, Ryusui's cards in his hand got flipped around. So Kohaku's like, you swapped in some cards. And Gen's like, oh, I'm shocked by this accusation, of course. And Senku is like, now it makes sense. You made some really obvious tricks so that we would be paying attention to you, so that you could actually swap out Ryusui's cards. And so all this was just for your decisive move. So everyone's like, oh man, the only way Senku can win, because he swapped out 4 cards, he must have 4 aces. So the only way that Senku can win is with a straight flush, which is basically impossible. So Senku does some calculations, and then he just kind of like says, so Kohaku can hear, 2nd and 5th from the top, 2nd from the bottom. So Ukyo, the dealer, is thinking Senku's got to fold here. But Senku goes all in as well. They're like, but why? And so Gen realizes what Senku's doing. Oh, he's drawn everyone's attention away. A basic magic trick. And so Kohaku says, and we'll be replacing 3 of the cards in our hands. And she just slices through the deck. And Gen's like, did those really come from the top of the deck? And she's like, of course it was. I'm offended by this accusation. And so, Tsukasa immediately is like, yeah, she grabbed them from the middle of the face down deck. And Chrome's like, well, yeah, even if she didn't grab from the top, who cares? It's not like she could see what the cards were. And Gen looks at the cards and is like, well, there's no special markings on them or anything. So Ryusu's like, maybe it's just a big bluff. So he looks at them and he's like, all right, that's it. This'll settle it. This one hand, we're both all in. He puts down his 4 aces, And Senku puts down a royal straight flush. And everyone's like, my chips, that's the game. And Yuki's like, there are 5 aces on the board. Oh, well.
I do love him being like, 5 aces? Nah, fuck it.
So Gen's like, how did you do that? How did you mark them? And Senku's like, well, I mean, you can't mark them. My scientific marking is colorless and invisible. It's urushiol, soaked up from some lacquer that we've conveniently got lying around. And from the start, I'd been searching for these key cards and marking their edges with the urushiol. And at that moment, Mitsubi looks over and is like, oh, right, like that it's the lacquer from the recorder. Okay. And Suika's like, oh, but if it's see-through, then that means nobody can see what it is. How could Senku tell what the cards were? And Senku's entire face is swollen up, and they're like, oh, right, his skin is really sensitive, so he used it as a sensor. So he hits his hand raised up in victory while his cheeks are each the size of someone's skull, and his lips are all puffed out. So like, all right, well, that settles what the route is. We're going to take the faster route and use GPS to navigate the globe. So this is a fun, enjoyable chapter. I don't really get exactly how he would have sensed it with the individual cards. I thought he would have just, tracked them with his memory after the cards were shuffled repeatedly or something like that. But whatever.
It's the Dr. Stone way of doing gambling, and it's silly and like a little bit dumb, but it's fun ultimately.
Yes.
Boichi has quite the stocking fetish, you can tell.
Does he? Nah. Boichi, thinks that a part of the woman's body is sexy. Nah. But yeah, I mean, the Inagaki way of gambling. Don't actually gamble, so. Chainsaw Man. Vroom vroom. Chapter 63, Trip to Hell. Beam has been knocked unconscious. Denji has been crucified by the last nail. And Toka sees his master emerging from a doorway as she applauds for him. She says, you did it, Toka. You completed the job I assigned to do. You've become a full-fledged devil hunter. And Toka's like, all right, let's move him, master. But she pauses and she says, there's no need to move that body. You always follow my instructions diligently. There were times when I was hard on you, but it was all for your own good. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking. You're part of the family now, too. And we get some flashbacks of the two of them spending time together. Her kind of nestled against his chest, talking to him while he's in bed with some stuffed bears. Them tracking down a fox and her holding up the fox's body. And she says, I'll tell you the secret to making a sophisticated doll. Take the human you'll turn into a doll and add emotions only humans have. Adoration, worship, pity, and the secret ingredient, guilt. And she puts her hand on his chest and he seizes up and he just freezes and he's just completely obedient and docile now. And she says, it's finished. We cut to Santa, who is outside, and he walks in through the doors. Aki wakes up at this moment, sees Chuan Chi pick up the bodyguard who was fighting her before, who goes, wait! And she throws him out the window too. This is like the third person she's thrown outside so far. He summons the octopus.
See, the problem is she thinks it's the Royal Rumble. So she's like, I've eliminated like 4 people. I'm doing great. And then she doesn't realize that it's not a battle royale. So
no, she can't win the title by count out, Chris. So fortunately, the bodyguard summons his octopus again, and it catches him right before his head's going to hit the ground. So Chuan Chi turns around. Aki is there. The angel devil is there. A few of the other bodyguards are there. And then all of a sudden, Aki gets a vision of the future, and he's like, what the hell is this? The newly dolled Toka is standing at attention. Santa is standing at attention. And Toka's master is now standing outside, and she says, bye-bye, Grandpa. As Santa, quote-unquote, turns his hand into a doll's blade and stabs himself through the chest as he declares, "I offer my heart and my beloved children. In exchange, Hell Devil, call all living things in this department store to hell." And we cut over to a house somewhere where there are 4 children eating dinner, and then a finger starts to go across the page where they have appeared. So that's creepy. And Santa, quote unquote, is left lying in a pool of his own blood as literally everyone else who was in the fucking building is now in just a dark area, this abyss. And Kobeni is there, and the Violence Devil are there. Denji's body is there, along with Tolka. And everyone's just like, what the fuck is happening? As we cut to outside, where all the people who were thrown out through the window are just kind of looking up at it. And the real Santa is sitting on a doll's back as she decrees, "Have a good trip, Tolka." And a hand falls from the sky and snatches the building. And we see everyone in a field with a countless number of doors in the sky. And they're in this flowery field, and there's a fucking bathtub there.
As you do.
Well, that was a trip.
It's a pretty bonkers chapter. I like it, though.
I guess we'll have to see exactly what the fuck happened next time, but this was crazy and a very interesting development. So
yeah, this is something that I'm sure like more time will help. Also, like I know there's a lot of people analyzing every step of this, like as this happens and everything like that. I'm just somebody who tends to prefer to like let these sort of situations play out and then see it from afar. But I do enjoy that the premise we were kind of initially promised of like 4 foreign assassin teams are going to come to try to kill Denji has completely not happened, and it's just kind of become this crazy battle royale with like 3 different like teams that are trying to do completely different things kind of going on. It's pretty cool.
One of them is now trapped inside one of the other assassins' realms, and one of them has lost 2 of his companions, and he's just outside with her and along with some of Denji's bodyguards. It's really messy because things unfolded so chaotically. So yeah.
I also enjoy that because Quan Chi's been throwing so many people out of the building.
That's why they're separated.
Like we've had a very
they would have all been inside the building if she just didn't go.
Yeah, like so it's because there's like 2 members of like 2 of Quan Chi's girlfriends are out there. Kobeni's out there. Like
no, Kobeni's inside of the
not Kobeni. The Mad Wolf or whatever they call him, the old dude.
Right.
He's out there. So like there's a bunch of characters that are outside this place, and like it'll be cool to see how they have to interact. I don't know why I said it like that. It'll be cool if they interact like that, but
yeah.
All right, Nick, let's talk about 7 Deadly Sins. Chapter something. Why does fucking Crunchyroll always do that? 344 to the future.
So we haven't had 7 Deadly Sins for the past 2 weeks. So the chapter that actually came out this week was chapter 346.
Yes.
But that still hasn't been put up on Crunchyroll, so we're like, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, we're going to talk about these 2 chapters. And I don't have a ton to say about these. I will say this. So there was a new mobile game that came out recently. 7 Deadly Sins Grand Cross is a gacha game for 7 Deadly Sins. And I was playing it, and I'm glad I played it, because it helped me learn a lot of the characters are going to see who I had completely forgotten about.
Because it's a collect them all kind of thing,
yeah,
right?
But I uninstalled that game though because it is real bad. Whoo! All right, bad rates.
What does Jeff had to say about it, Chris? Because he's the only one who I trust.
You know what? That's fair. Jeff might have a better opinion than I did. Maybe I just had really bad pulls, so I don't know. So for the 3rd time in 7 Deadly Sins, everything's finally wrapping up. Everyone's going to get married. Gauther's going to go out on a journey to find what their goal in life is going to be. They all say, hey, we're going to be friends together. There's a brief moment where it's Melodious, Elizabeth, and Hawk, and they're like, wow, just the three of us, just like we were when this journey all started. Hawk's like, hey, I'm going to head out. I'm going to go to Purgatory. And everyone's like, how does he expect to get to Purgatory? And there's a cutaway to the king being like, you're going to take Mary Elizabeth to become the king? Oh, this is so great. And they're like, well, eventually, we're going to go out traveling the world first, which is, I don't know why we didn't just do a time skip, because essentially every fucking group says, I'm going to go out and explore the world, with the exception of Bon and Elaine, or not Bon and Elaine, King and Diane, who are like, we're going to just head to the fairy forest to start restoring things. Every other group's like, time to explore the world. That's basically all of consequence there. The king's like, no, I want grandkids one day. Hawk finds a portal. We're not sure exactly who opens it. But it's a portal to Purgatory.
It's one of the 7 holy virtues, Chris. Yeah. It's definitely going to happen.
Hawk goes into Purgatory. He's like, oh, it's burning. Oh, it's pain. Oh, why did I go here? This is really bad. And then who should he bump into but Mild, who everybody was like, aren't you dead? And Hawk's like, Mild, my brother. And he's like, no, don't get too attached. I only have 1,000,000 years left on me. Hawk's like, that's enough time. So I was like, I do kind of like that.
That is really funny that he thinks like, oh, I don't have much time left. That's actually a really long time, bro.
I expended so much of myself helping to fight against the demon lord. Oh wait, no, I have plenty of time. Now let's go to chapter 345, Heirs. So we open with Slater, and I think Simon is his name. He was one of those characters I had to discover in the game because I forgot this character fucking existed. Nothing happens there. We see that Hauser has taken on a role as like a chief holy knight who trains the others. I don't know why he's specifically training Gioia and Jericho when they should also be pretty high ranked too, but I don't know. We needed to fit them in somewhere. Jericho gets a message like, hey, something's happening at Bon and Elaine. So she runs out. She's got to go do that thing. We see Death Pierce, who I don't fucking remember at all. He didn't show up in the game, so I had no idea who this character was. And he's like, I'm going to start my own kingdom. One for humans and humans alone. And he leaves. That's all we get from Death Pierce.
That doesn't sound bad at all.
Yeah. Then we see Dreyfus and Hendrickson, who have both quit the Holy Knights and have started up a potion shop together, and this story won't let them fuck. Just let them fuck. God damn it. They definitely are not opening a potion shop together and in a gay relationship. They're definitely not. Wink, wink, wink. Then we cut over to the former king. He's around with the other people, Gil Thunder and the princess whose name I'm never going to remember, and then Veronica and another character only discovered because of the game, Griamore. I forgot he was there.
It's the guy. That's the guy whose father was right. Yeah,
he's the guy who makes shields.
Okay,
that's all he does, for my knowledge. I don't know. I think. Anyway. He might be Dreyfus's son. I can't remember. Yes, they didn't really establish that couple, like that relationship so much. There's not a whole lot there. Basically, just the king mentions like, oh, well, I already know what gender Meliodas and Elizabeth's son's going to child is going to be, thanks to my vision. We go to the forest. Bon and Elaine are having a child. Elaine's pregnant. She's just about ready to give birth, and they're like, what should we name our baby? And Bon's like, I've already decided. And we cut over to Leonis, and Elizabeth's about to have a baby, and she's like, what do we name the baby? And Meliodas like, I've made up my mind. And Meliodas and Elizabeth's baby is going to be named Tristan, and Elaine and Bon's baby is going to be Lancelot. So we're continuing on the Arthurian legend stuff.
Yes.
There's going to be a great, wonderful future for you ahead. They've already confirmed there is going to be a Seven Deadly Sins spinoff. I don't know if it's going to be by the mangaka. Okay. Yeah, they've confirmed a spinoff. I've heard rumors that it might be related to Arthur, but it also might just be attached to these kids as well. Who knows? Melodius looks out the window and is like, well, wonder what kind of future awaits.
Baby.
Da, 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 da.
Yeah, okay. It was fine, I guess.
Look, we've done this 3 times now. I just keep waiting for another rock to fall. Like in my
Cry
mind.
wolf again. Cry wolf again.
Like, no, they announced the final chapter date. It has to end this time. And then, boom, rock falls. And like, follow this up with the next sequel series, Seven Deadly Sins 2. Suck it, nerds. We got you again.
Buy it, bitch.
Like, this is just the level of the fucking Sharingan I never realized the Genjutsu that makes me think that Seven Deadly Sins is actually going to end, and it never does. And I'm just trapped in this hellish repetition of that ending.
Oh, man. Promised Neverland.
Oof, man,
Chapter...
What a fucking, like, downswing of emotion, too.
Chapter 172. Free. There is a very nice 2-page color spread of Emma and Ray and Norman hanging out together. Got all sorts of, like, you know, pieces from games and stuff, and a chessboard and everything. It's very sweet.
What fucking game are they playing, though? That's got to be confusing when they're just making up
best
rules.
Game ever, apparently.
Yeah, yeah.
So Ratri is like, well, Emma's the one who made the promise, so I'll take her down with me. Come with daddy, my children. I'm scary. I'm a very well-established villain.
I read this chapter, but I must have skipped over this panel. Because what the fuck is it?
So he's like, I was wrong. Don't shoot me. And he's like, I'll stab her when I get close enough. But Emma lowers her gun and is like, we don't want to kill you. We came here to talk to you. And he's like, huh? And Emma says, inviolable non-interference. We won't retaliate or attack the Ratri clan anyway. In return, we want you to approve our freedom. We'll all go to the human world. We want you to approve and not get in the way, to leave us alone. And Ratri's like, she's an idiot! And she's like, really? You're going to forgive me? But Emma flashes back to a conversation she had with Jillian, who said, I can't forgive them. I'm never going to forgive them, and how could you feel sorry for them? How could you forgive them? And Emma says, I can't forgive them. There's no way I can. I hate them. I miss Hugo and Lucas, what they did to Mary and them. Okay, so there's a way of referring to multiple people in Japanese, which is to say the name of just one person and then to say Tachi at the end. So, you know, Mary and company, basically. Mm-hmm. The Straw Hats could be referred to, for example, as Luffy-tachi. Translating it in English this way, of Mary and them, is such an and the rest way of addressing people that you supposedly cared about who were killed. It's so gross. Norman and his friends makes more sense because it's Norman's group.
Yeah.
But when you're saying Mary and the other people who were killed at the same time as Mary, by the way, who the fuck was Mary? Is such a fucking... Who cares who these characters were? God. Emma's pissed off at them, and she hates the system of the farms, and all of it's unforgivable. And also, Chris hasn't woken up yet.
Oh, Chris! We've forgotten about him.
And so she says in the present...
But they got the medicine for him.
Yeah, he should be fine. She says, I can't forgive you, but I don't want to resolve this by killing you. I don't want to hate and resent and fear anymore. I don't want those feelings. So I want to be Smile, and we want to be free. And that's what we've been fighting for all this time. It's not just our fate or circumstances, hatred and fear too. We don't want to be imprisoned by anything anymore. And so back in the flashback when she was having this conversation with Jillian, Oliver and Nigel, were like, yeah, we want to do this because we want to be free. And it's hard to forgive, but unless we do, we won't truly be free. And Oliver's like, but it still won't be easy to get through to him. And it was like, but I want to try. I want to talk it out. And Jillian got upset with her. And she's like, you're talking like a dreamer, but fine. Let's go as far as we can. which is nice to have this conversation with the Goldie Pond people in terms of like, hey, this is how I'm going to do things. And she kind of needed their blessing in order to go forward with this. And to have them come around to this is a nice little touch. That said, this is the most, like, if we all just put in the effort, it would all be okay. The middle of the road is the way to go.
Yeah, so look, I don't necessarily disagree with some of the ideas on this, but I liked Emma's characterization. This feels in line with what Emma would say and do, and obviously that is the thesis of the Promised Neverland, that this is the way problems would be solved. But did you have to in it use a giant page showing all these real life you're like, if only we could talk the things out, there wouldn't be homeless people or women suffering or civil rights
there wouldn't be migrants from other countries being rejected. There wouldn't be the coronavirus question marks all over.
Like, it's just one of those things where you're like, man, what a fucking poorly timed chapter, and why in the world you would try to like directly connect this to all these events is mind-boggling. Like,
just replace that page with the page from Air Gear of the World Trade Center collapsing.
Like, what a poor decision to marry this to.
I mean, having the ideals shared here is one thing, but then literally having Emma saying, could we have been friends? Just because our positions are different, we fight, denigrate, and hate each other. But if we take away our positions, if we could think that way, maybe we wouldn't have to hate each other. We are the world. We are the children. Fuck off.
Like, it's just, it's such a weird sentiment, because it's also, the scale of these things is all over the place. One, the coronavirus would have probably still happened. Like, that's not something that you're just like, if only we were friends, the coronavirus wouldn't have happened. Like,
now, I think the idea there is that
there wouldn't
one
be
of the things
riots.
That there wouldn't be people denigrating each other because, oh, the coronavirus comes from China or whatever. That is true. It's a very weird thing to include in a collage of other things, though.
But it's also, it's like, if only people were able to understand each other, there wouldn't be Twitter bullying and also racism, I guess. Like, no, you can't equate these on the same level. Like, you could take the principle of the idea behind this and you can create a philosophy behind it and live your life by that way. But to just like kind of boldly say all these problems wouldn't exist if we didn't hate each other is, definitely like real pie in the sky kind of mentality that I don't know should be the one being addressed by this children's manga that's been absolute ass garbage for like 2 straight years now.
An allegory stops being effective if you flat out say, it's like if we did this differently, then these things wouldn't happen. Then it's just like, you're just telling me what your message is as opposed to making the allegory. So,
because like, as bad as the things on here are, you're like, but this is Emma, who has been raised in a world where children are bred to be eaten by the age of like 13 years old. And if a girl who could survive all this, having her friends been eaten, if she could come to that level, then why can't all of us come to that level? And you're like, yeah, but I don't need you to real life like sticky tack like notepads and thread to like connect all these things. Like,
we're reading Beastars right now, which deals heavily with themes of racism and stereotypes and how those cause people to interact differently with each other. But it is in a world where everyone is an anthropomorphic animal. So there is a little bit of just like, you're a different color than me between like all rabbits. But there's also the whole thing of like, well, carnivores are supposed to eat other animals and all this stuff. And so there are things that it's just like there's not even an attempt to say this is like an animal version of this thing that exists between people. It's more just a general broader theme. And if you take that and apply it to real world things, then you start to see the gaps in exactly how well it can be applied to them. So sometimes it's better to not draw the comparison at all.
It's also it's explicitly the author doing this, because Emma doesn't exist in a world with the
she doesn't know what this shit is
and like she doesn't know any of this stuff. So this is the author saying, "Hey, what if, guys?"
Can you imagine if like you cut back to the lessons that were at the very beginning of the series, and it's like, and what happened on this outdated social media platform known as Twitter?
Also, I don't know why this bugs me so much. Look, the top image definitely feels like it's meant to be evocative of the civil rights movement. Those look like American like style architecture, but they're all carrying signs with demon writing on it. But the coronavirus is in English. I don't know why that part bothered me so much. But I was like, I know you're not intending it to be that way, but why is all the protest signs in demon script?
I don't know, Chris. All right. Emma says, you had your own sense of justice as you protected the two worlds. I was raised as Fu, and I can't ever forgive you for what you did, but there are people who are protected by the Rotary clan sacrificing us. I'm sure you had your own struggles, like protecting the world or choosing the world over your family. You also had a fate you were burned with from the moment you were born. So let's be free. We're all prisoners. The demons, humans, yes, both you and us. But the world will change. We can change! Let's all change!
If I can change, you can change, and we can all change! Let's do it! We ended the Cold War! I picked this dude up and we did it! Let's decide, Mr. Kerpenstock, tear down that wall!
Have you ever seen that? I think it's like a Funny or Die video, which is like a documentary about the end of Rocky IV, where they treat it as history and what happened as a result of it.
It's always going to be the most astonishing. I know I mentioned on the podcast before, but it'll never stop being amusing to me that they continued the Rocky franchise after that, and they continued in a serious way, and no one at any point's like, hey, remember Rock that time you ended the Cold War?
Remember that time you had a robot butler?
Remember that time? Like, how did my dad die? Oh, hot dogging it out to the ring for 35 minutes and then just getting, like, punched in the neck and dying. Man, Rocky IV is such a stupid movie.
Emma says, let's end the 1,000 years of suffering. She extends her hand to Rotary and says, let's live together. And he's like, what the fuck is this girl's talking about as the chapter ends? Black Clover, chapter 244.
All right, let's talk Black Clover. Zip. Because Chainsaw Man, or Zipman can't do that anymore. Cinderella Grey, page 244. So, Asta's fighting. Gravity Guy, I think, activates an ability called Heavy Infighting to make his fists super heavy with gravity, and then just starts punching the shit out of Asta. I don't know.
It's the best Asta fight ever.
I was like, I don't know what Hajime no Ippo character technique this feels reminiscent of, but
it's many, because he's an infighter, Chris. It's not a technique; it's a method of fighting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Gray is crying over Gauch's body.
It could be the shotgun, because he's throwing a lot of rapid punches.
Okay. Gray is crying because Gauch is dying, and she thinks back to her past where she was Cinderella. She grew up.
Basically.
I mean, it's not. I mean, the chapter's called Cinderella Gray. It's not trying to hide away. It's the Cinderella story. She grew up with a wicked stepmother and two wicked stepsisters. They hated her. They called her ugly. They say she should just wear these ashes all the time. She learned transformation magic and tried to transform into one of them, and they hated her. They're like, you mock us. Get out of here. Change back. We'll kill you. She runs away. She encounters a bunch of thugs who say they're going to basically kill her or take her or rob her or whatever. Gauch saves her, says he only did it because Marie wanted her to, and then basically drops a line where he's like, hey, if you're not really committed to running away, go home already. If you're not prepared to get everything with your own two hands, you won't survive in a dirty world like this one. And Gray says, I don't think you know this, Gauche, but when I didn't have anything, the light you gave me helped me thrive, and I did my best and survived. I met you again. I made real friends, people who were like a family I could really trust, and I want to save you, Gauche. It's embarrassing, but I want you to look at me more now that I'm stronger. And something she's doing starts to tear away the sword in Gauche's chest and seems to actually close his wounds. So maybe her transformation magic is even more powerful now. Maybe it can essentially, like an alchemist, she can turn things differently, or I don't know. It's the way Black Clover tends to do a lot of healing, where it's like,
she can do a lot of things,
damage.
Chris.
Yeah.
Her magic can let her do all sorts of magic, Chris. So
Asta loses the fight, though. He got punched too many times. He's down on the ground, and his demon powers have left him. They're like,
turns out negating magic doesn't do shit when you're just getting punched in the face.
He's like, ow, 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 ow,
so that is what this feels like.
And then Dante, that's his name. He's like, you have another arcane stage. Your powers are wastery too. Come be my women. And then Yami shows up.
Yeah,
that's a chapter.
He's like, I'm gonna fuck you up.
Yeah.
There's some nice stuff in this. I mean, this does really, I think really help you sympathize with Gray, and it does definitely show, hey, she has this connection to Gauche that he's basically completely ignorant of. It's one of those things where sometimes it's frustrating because it's something that's like, if you put in a little bit more effort early on, then I would appreciate this much more. It's that thing that I mentioned, with My Hero Academia a couple weeks ago with, hey, if you show, like in the quiet moments, these characters connecting just a little bit, then when you have the big moment later on, it pays off. And as much as we've seen Gauche and Gray as part of the same group, we've just kind of seen their, comic shtick up to this point of Gauche doesn't really like all the freaks he ends up having to spend time with, but then they fight someone and they get along. And that's basically it. Because Black Clover always moves at the pace of like there's always fighting going on, so you don't have a lot of that quiet time to do the character work ahead of time. But I really do like the stuff in Gray's flashback. I like how her sisters are mocking her, and they bring up, we were blessed with all this beauty, and you've got nothing, and so she transforms herself into them, thinking that will make them love her, and that just makes them hate her more. And it's like, of course that's how it is, but it's, you understand why she thinks that way. And then there's the rape triad that shows up, which is really unnecessary, but hey, Gauche saves her, hooray. And so then you see like, oh, that's why, she has that connection to Gauche. And also, of course he doesn't realize that's her because she looks like one of her sisters. So there's some good stuff in this. It could just be better if Black Clover were a completely different sort of series and one that I like more. No,
I will be curious. I know there's definitely fairy tale elements to Black Clover in the past. There was a whole like going to a witch's forest to remove a curse thing. I can't remember if I've ever noticed anything as explicit as Gray is Cinderella. Here is her Cinderella backstory. Because I'll be honest, I kind of like it more when Black Clover really kind of lays into like fairy tale folklore. I don't know. It gives like a flavor to the series that I think is more interesting than just like generic medieval magic.
And it makes sense because, Cinderella was transformed at the night of the ball. The lizards were transformed into horses. The pumpkin becomes a carriage. Things are transformed into other things. So it's like, yeah, okay. Yeah. So like, it makes sense thematically.
Yeah.
So.
We've had other things, Charlotte and her thorn curse and things like that are definitely evocative, but just never anything as explicit as this. And I kind of like it being kind of explicit, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
So if we go back to the Heart Kingdom, and there's a crab there that's leading all the fish in a song.
Ooh, I hope it's the song from Kingdom Hearts 2. Let's have some fishy fun. Kingdom Hearts 2 is great. They had the Atlantis world.
I know. I want that to go just from you explaining that and me not reacting, and then you saying Kingdom Hearts 2 is great, and then that's it.
Kingdom Hearts 2 is great. Atlantis was a fun ocean world in the first one. In the second world, it was a rhythm game, and they ran out of Disney. They ran out of Little Mermaid songs real quick.
So they just had to make up more ones.
Well, I think they start you off with it because they're like, we want Under the Sea and Part of Your World to be like the big song, like the final ones. Like I feel like you finish with like Under the Sea or something like that. Maybe no, I think there's actually like it's the Killing Ursula fight, but like they want you to build up to it. But the first one's like, down in the water, we're gonna have some fanny fun. Like, it's just like, holy shit, was that in one of the sequels, or did you write this? Because this is terrible. And also, everyone who's shitting on the first level in Kingdom Hearts 1, fuck you. Underwater levels are always the best. You're wrong.
One Piece.
One Piece!
Chapter 975. Kinemon's clever trick. We see that where did Shinobu go last time when Contra suddenly had Momonosuke? He drew some snakes and had them tie her up, I guess. And of course, Contra is just reacting to Luffy's group having arrived. Frankie is in full samurai regalia along with Usopp, and of course, Chopper's got his samurai helmet. All the straw hats are there basically on the ship. And but Chopper's like, where are all the people from the labor camp, though? Because no one sees them. No one sees the Yakuza either. And so basically, none of the Straw Hats know where this army was supposed to be. So what's going on? So they're like, well, did they get into trouble? So Kinemon shouts over to them that the plan has been leaked. And Luffy's just like, they're like, I don't know what's happened to them. So, some of the beast pirates are like, we might have failed to destroy the lion ship, but we made sure to sink every boat lined up at Itachi port last night. And on Shogun Orochi's orders, we took down every great bridge that connects the regions. That's why none of your friends showed up. And even if they had made it, they wouldn't be getting to Onigashima without ships. If you miss this opportunity, you'll never get another chance. Because all the rebels we've lured into the open are going to die slowly and painfully starting tomorrow. The alliance of the... And also they declare Animal Kingdom Pirates and Big Mom Pirates are working together, and everyone's like, oh shit, Big Mom and Kaido are working together. So they're like, you've only got 3 tiny pirate ships. What are you going to do now? And they point their cannons at them, and Luffy and Law and Kid are all like, everyone get behind me. I'm going to throw down with everyone at once. And so they all go into action at once. Kid uses his punk rotten, Luffy goes into his bounce man form, and Law uses his room, and they're just immediately blowing shit up. I like how they start going into action, and immediately the Beast Pirates who were talking all this shit were like, well, hang on a second! So, all 3 captains are kind of squabbling after they've wrecked one of the ships, so that worked. But then the Kyoshiro family shows up, and all of the Animal Kingdom Pirates are like, we're saved! And they say, look, Lord Orochi ordered for them to be sunk, so that's what we've got to do. And Kyoshiro says, sink the enemy, you say? Allow me. And he pulls out his sword, and he swings it, and one of the Animal Kingdom ships gets cut, a third of it cut off very easily. So everyone's like, why are you doing this? And they're like, oh, hey, it's the Yakuza boss who took after Hyogoro. And he shouts over to them and says, I am a Yakuza of the Flower Capital. The people there call me Napping Kyoshiro. The 200 men of the Kyoshiro family are at your disposal for this raid. And everyone wants to know why he's doing this. And he says, the favor and debt I owe the Kozuki clan is immeasurable. The people believed it to be caused by Lord Owen's rampage, but they're wrong. And he basically, he was wearing a wig this whole time. So... Hey, it's Denjiro. Kinemon's like, oh my gosh.
It's got to be such a tough wig to wear, too, because it's so front heavy.
Yeah. That must be just embedded in the back of his head when he's wearing it.
Oh, you'll lift it up, you'll see that there was like a giant, like a tent spike. Oh. He like nailed it to the back of his skull.
So everyone's reunited with Denjiro, and He says, I would have revealed myself to you at once, but I chose to stay your enemy just in case. And sure enough, if I had named myself, the betrayer in your midst would have passed it on and ensured Orochi had me killed. Instead, I retained Orochi's trust to the end, and thus I was able to liberate 1,000 samurai from the Resetsu prisoners' quarters and add 1,200 soldiers to the total. And so we're like, it's time for us to fight. So they're like, we've got to warn. The pirates are like, we've got to warn Onigashima. And then, Chris. So Denjiro says, Kin, I knew that you were sharp. Lord Yasuye's riddle image featured 2 lines over the stomach of the Habu pit viper, which symbolizes Habu port. Those 2 lines over the belly, of course, are assigned to remove the midsection of the word, because it would be obvious to all that taking the middle out of Habu Minato leads behind Hato, or wharf. You relate only the message of 2 lines to the others. But because you sensed that Orochi had a spy in your midst, you cleverly misread the answer as Tokage port in the presence of your group, and the unwinged spy passed the answer of Tokage straight to Orochi, and Kanjuro reacts in shock to this news. Denjiro says, such is the foolishness of a man who lies fallow in the capital for too long. Orochi misjudged the distance between locations and chose to make his move last night. But by that time, all of your allied forces were done crossing the bridges, and all the ships you needed had left the port. The ones they sank were those left behind. So the 4,200 soldiers you rallied followed the plan perfectly, hiding themselves behind the maple forest along the wharf at Habu Port, that place so beloved by Lord Yasuye, until the moment of the plan had arrived. And all the Exile and I are like, then that means everyone's fine. And so multiple people are like, it's 20 years later, but we'll never forget Lord Odin's legendary death. We believed that the Kazuki clan would return to power. Let's work together, Akazaya. We're ready to fight. The raid on Onigashima hasn't lost a single step. And with our 1,200 to add, the total now stands at 5,400 soldiers. Continue forth. Onward to Onigashima. And Luffy's reacting to all this, and he's like, not really sure what just happened, but we're good to go. All the Beast Kingdom pirates are freaked out by the number of their rankings. Denjiro says, you truly are a leader, Kin. A man worthy of respect. Kanjuro is angry. He's like, we haven't stopped a thing. Curse you, Kinemon. And Kinemon says, yes. And he thinks to himself, so the whole entire time it was supposed to be the wharf and not Tokage Port. And that's the chapter. This was so fucking funny. It's like 5 pages of like, oh, we did it! The clever ruse has succeeded! And Kinemon's like, guess I was wrong about what Lord Yasuye meant.
His face is, he's like, yes.
No one must ever know.
I don't know, like intricate, just like, and you cleverly figured out that there was, of course, a midsection to be taken out, but even more cleverly than that, you realized that you had to share false information because there was a spy in your midst, and just him like,
what a great man you are, Kinemon. Yes.
Fuck, it's such a funny chapter. God damn.
It's so silly because this is like the big moment of triumph. All the samurai are here. And Kimon's like, whoops. Like, no one must ever know.
He just fell ass backward into it. Fuck, man, it's so funny.
So it wasn't some chess master that decided this maneuver. It was just pure dumb luck.
Yeah.
So.
God damn it. I love it.
Wonderful, wonderful chapter. All right, that's it for Weekly Manga Recap. We've been going at this for a while because there was a lot to discuss. So let's name our favorites this week, Chris. Favorite chapter?
Favorite chapter, I'm going to give to One Piece. It was a super funny chapter. I love that we actually did get the cool moment too of like, hey, the Armada is still here, the fleet's still here, all these people are here, and let's ride off to Onigashima. But like it's such a great like change too after like the triumphant moment of last chapter where all the Straw Hats, you know, like the Lions rise up.
We're here and need a fight. Yeah.
And this one like continues it, but goes for a different tone of like, and thank God to our brilliant wise leader Kinemon, and him like. Yeah, sure, guys.
Like they all but like bring him up on stage to give him an award or something, and he's like, Yeah. My favorite series is going to be Chainsaw Man. I really liked the turn that the battle took, and I love how confusing and bizarre everything is. My MVP, however, is going to be Kinemon.
That's fair.
For all the best and worst reasons. So
I'm going to give my MVP to Gray for Black Clover. I thought this was a really well-needed chapter for her. I kind of like what this is doing for her character, and I think it's going to make things more interesting for her going forward.
we had some highs and some lows this week on Weekly Manga Recap. So, yeah.
The audience, by the way, picked Chainsaw Man for their chapter of the week and Toka's Master, who we don't know the name of yet, for the character of the week.
All right. Well, that is going to do it, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on the live recording of the show on twitch.tv/RoloT, where we record Wednesdays around 7:30 to 8 Eastern time each evening. You can follow us on Twitter at WMR Podcast, at RoloT, and at Nick F. Time. Those latter two are your hosts' accounts, and WMR Podcast is the official podcast account to follow for updates when stuff gets posted on weeklymangarecap.podbean.com, where you can check out all of our past episodes, as well as on iTunes and all that kind of stuff. Comment and rate so that we can rise in the ranks of the hobby section and defeat the woodworkers. You can send us feedback by joining the Discord channel. That is also where you can just discuss with other people the recap chapters, the series that we're going to actually be covering, all that kind of stuff. And you can also find a link to the Google Doc that Ninja X3i maintains, where we keep track of our recommendations, the audience votes, and all that stuff. Special thanks go out to our Patreon supporters. You allow us to create bonus content for you guys to enjoy. We recently recorded a special As Explained by Manga thing, so look out for that soon. And special thanks to Infamous Planet for the new frame for the visual version of the podcast, to Steve Man, our tile cut artist, to Milo Jack Stillitz and Wesley L. Cheddar for making the opening sequence for WMR. And that's going to do it.
Yep. All right. Now let's head off into the sunset, Nick, as we often do.
Well, it's dark out already, Chris.
Oh, no. Well, we're going to have to wait here until tomorrow then.
Okay, let's just sit here. When is sunset again? 6:30 p.m.
6 something, yeah. I think it changes based on region.
Okay.
Technically, our sunrises won't even be exactly the same, so one of us is probably going to sit here a little bit longer than everybody else.
Oh, that's going to be awkward.
Yeah.
Let's just wait here quietly for the next 23 hours then.
All right. Did you see any AEW recently?
Yeah, I watched the broadcast they did last week. It was actually really good, despite the lack of crowd. They were very creative in what they did with them.
That's cool. You got a toilet paper?
Oh yeah, fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
You want to get food lately? I hear if you're having trouble going to the grocery store, it's you want to try hitting up the Asian markets and or stuff like that. So.
Yeah, ironically, Target, the Target by me is actually really well stocked. Like that was the place I hit up. Yeah, actually, I was at the grocery store the other day and I grabbed some hamburger meat and like a lady like ran me down like the store to be like, no, you get a 2-for-1. It was very sweet.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to know.
I coughed into her ear as I walked by. I just wanted to demonstrate my superiority.